You're right.
If I could have your attention, please. Thank you very much. Good evening. I am Councillor Richard Clifton, Chair of the Planning Committee of Sutton Council. Can I welcome you to this meeting of the committee on Wednesday, the 8th of July 2022, starting at 7 p.m. The Vice Chair of this committee is Councillor Jane McCoy, who will take over if I become disposed in the course of the evening. The meeting is being streamed via the Council's website and will be available following the meeting. I'd like to welcome those members of the public watching the live stream and those attending in person here tonight. As members know, live streaming this meeting means we have cameras in the room and a microphone in the middle of the room, in addition to those in front of us. Therefore, please speak clearly when I invite you to speak so the microphone picks up what is being said. Please also refrain from speaking when someone is addressing the committee so there isn't interference on the audio. If the council needs to leave the meeting before the end, please let the clerk know. Can I draw your attention to the plan at the beginning of the agenda showing the arrangements for the evacuation of the building in the event of a fire? The fire alarm is a loud siren. If it sounds, make your way by the nearest fire exit to the Holiday Inn car park next to this building. If you have a disability that could hinder you, please make the person next to you aware of it so they may provide assistance. In the interest of time, I'm going to take the agenda items in a slightly different order, but I'll come to that in a moment. But I would like to say that there are some people probably watching on the live stream and who are in the public gallery tonight who are here largely for the Linda Lodge application. Now, I'd like just to try and help you with your evening. I'm afraid that obviously something has to be last on the agenda, and I tend to try to make an estimate myself on looking at what's before us. On the basis of my experience of the committee, how long it will take on each item. I'm sometimes wildly wrong, but I don't think we will get to that before 9 p.m. So I'll give an undertaking now that we won't take that item before 9 p.m. So if that helps you in terms of organising your evening, perhaps that's helpful. We have a large public gallery this evening, I notice. Can I ask that everyone is respectful of those speaking, including those who registered to speak on each application, so we can all hear one another and so the live stream is clear for those watching. Apologies and declarations. Can I ask them if we have apologies and declarations?
Chair, I have received apologies from Councillor Patrick Magnus, with Councillor Tilly Bowley attending as substitute.
Thank you very much. The next item is the minutes of the last meeting. Sorry, Councillor McCoy, sorry.
Yes, I just wanted to declare, well, potential interest.
We haven't actually got to declarations. Right. Item 3 is minutes. The minutes of the previous meeting, I'm advised that these are not yet available, so we'll move on. And we will seek to approve the minutes at the next meeting for the committee. That takes me before declarations of interest. Councillor.
Thank you. Yes, just to acknowledge that in my previous role as the chair of the Housing, Economy and Business Committee, that committee agreed the programme of council house building that is dealt with on item 8. And as chair, I would have been briefed on the sort of the strategic aspects of that application. However, that's not the same as the planning brief here, and I'm clear that as a member of the planning committee, the perspective needs to be that on the planning merits of the case and nothing else.
Okay, thank you very much. Any other declarations of interest? Councillor Shields.
Thank you, Chair. On the Linda Lodge application, I've spoken to the monitoring officer. I do not live a million miles away from it, so there is an opportunity, a possibility that I may be recognised or known to people in the wider locality of where I live, and I think it's right and proper to outline that is the case.
Right, thank you very much. Are there any other declarations of interest? I don't see any. Councillor Crowley, could I ask you a question? Which is this, we have on our agenda tonight at item 6, ERF Waste Management Facility. This was scheduled to be discussed at our last meeting,
Yes.
but was deferred. Now, I don't know anything about this, but I've seen, well, it's a one newspaper article, and I've seen a number of social media reports of a demonstration against this application that took place outside, which your name was mentioned as being.
I have not predetermined you. I am predisposed, but I have not predetermined.
Well,
That is the law of the land here. So therefore, I am entitled to sit at this committee.
I think that you should state that. Well, you have stated that, and I think that we should record that in the minutes, because I don't want someone subsequently to see.
People standing at that demonstration, not just me, who are also members of this committee. Therefore, I actually do think that you're picking me out, and actually I don't like that.
I only picked you out because on social media posts that I saw, your name was mentioned. That was.
Could you please refer to that social media? Mr. Chair, please?
But look, so you say that there were other, but I think those, if there's anyone who was involved in this, I think we should report in the minutes.
What social media post are you referring to, and what newspaper article? Because I have not seen a newspaper article, and I would like to know what social media post you're referring to. You've made an allegation against me here.
No,
I'm entitled, hang on, I'm entitled to respond to, and you're trying to actually make it out in some respect that I have got an issue here. And I have not. I've been around the block long enough, Councillor, your chair, to realise that I know what the legalities are of this committee. I'm very, very aware. So please, I would like to think, out of respect for you and respect for me, that you would understand that.
Okay, but thank you. I only raised it because it would give you an opportunity to make it clear that you have no predetermination. So you've done that, and if there's anybody else who was involved in that demonstration, I think that they should say that as well. But I don't think there was anybody else. Sorry.
I entered the building at the last exhibition event through the front door, and I did stop and speak to one or two people. But as Councillor Crowley, I have not made up my mind one way or the other.
Right. Okay. Councillor Shields, I guess you're going to say the same.
I'm saying the same. Look, yes, I had casual conversations without commitment.
Okay, right. That's absolutely fine. We move on. So, urgent business. I'm not aware of any urgent business, so I'll move straight to the main agenda item of the plan application. So can I, first of all, direct your attention to item 5 on the agenda, Richmond House. Now, those members of the committee who were members of the committee last February will look at this and say, why is this on the agenda? Because we discussed it and we agreed it last February. Now, my understanding is this, that we discussed it. I mean, it's an important application because it relates to a building in Worcester Park that was burnt down, but it wasn't controversial and we agreed it in COP. However, it transpires that due to an administrative error, the draft decision letter that was attached to the paper was the wrong one. And legal advice has been sought, and the advice is that it has to come back to the committee for us to agree, not the application, already agree the application, but agree the draft decision letter. I better read this. So the committee is asked to agree that the corrected draft decision notice, Appendix B, and the conditions of the area that the Planning Commission drafted on the 2nd of February 2022 form part of the legal agreement of the application. And I'm also told that only members that were present at the committee in February and voted on this item originally should vote on the recommendation tonight, which appears to be Councillor Shields, Councillor Foster, and myself. Is that correct? Right. So any questions on this? And we'll try and do that. Yes, Councillor Shields. Councillor Shields, did you want to say anything?
For expediency, I think you've been quite succinct in explaining the difference in the letter of agreement. This has been through the stringent planning process now for the 3rd time. I think it comes across our desks. It is a minor, it is a minor amendment to correct a technicality. I would feel comfortable if you move to the vote, but that is your discretion, of course.
All right, unless anyone's got anything else they want to say, I'll fix the vote. Right, take the vote, please. Thank you very much, Councillor Gibbs.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Tim, sorry, excuse me. Councillor Tony Shields,
For.
Councillor Richard Clifford,
Four.
and Councillor Tim Potter. For. Thank you, Chair. That's 3 votes for.
That's great. Very good. Okay, right. Let me now draw your attention to, if I could, item 10 on the agenda, 3 St Barnabas Road, Sutton, erection of a single-storey rear side extension. This only comes before us because the applicant is a councillor. Sorry, Councillor Allen.
And this became my diary when back to February 21. I wasn't planning committee that evening.
Sorry.
Since I was on planning committee in February 21.
I asked Ben to check this, and he says that you weren't there. Now, what's the answer? Come on. Sorry. It's February 2022 this year.
I was here at 22 as well.
You say you were here.
On both Februaries.
I'll just check the minutes, Chair, and give me 1 second.
Yes, that would be fine.
Chair, I think if it helps, I'll just
second.
Councillor Allen, and if he was here, he would be for it.
Okay, look, can we leave this with you to sort out whether Councilman was here? If he was, then he's recorded. Okay, look, let's move on. St Barnabas Road, Sutton, erection of a single-storey rear side extension. This is only before us because the applicant is a councillor. There is actually one objection to it. But on page 708, this is discussed by the officer, is that this would not be reason to reject the application, and the recommendation is in favour. I'm in the hands of the committee. Are you satisfied that on the basis of the paperwork that we have before us, we can agree this without need for the formalities of a presentation and discussion, etc.? You are?
Yes.
Okay, well, in that case, can I ask you if you would take the roll vote on item 10, 3
Chair, can I just ask one thing? Just one. This is a process pedantic thing, really. The fact that Councillor Bryony Job was not a councillor when this application was originally made,
yes.
why then now does it become pertinent that she's a councillor? Because when it went in and it went live, she was not a councillor. So I just don't understand that, because they felt under delegated powers, they could have granted it on that basis. I'm just trying to get to the.
Okay, if necessary, I'll ask our legal advisor to advise on this, but fact of the matter is it hasn't been agreed, and she is now a councillor, so therefore it's got to come to us under the rules. Can I ask her if she would like to? Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct. The moment the decision is made is the moment when the period of judicial review and other challenges can be made. So consequently, you need to follow a due process. So it's at the moment that the decision is being considered and then made, it's whose identity is what. So obviously she's councillor at the moment. So we'll be absolutely clear that there's no bias, predetermination or anything else in relation to that. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you. The vote following the application, Councillor Eric Allen, Councillor Tim Brody, Councillor Sam Gunmer, Councillor Tim Foster, Councillor Amy Harley, Councillor Patrick O'Brien, Councillor Tony Shields, Councillor Lou Taylor, Councillor Jamie Boyd, Councillor Richard.
4. Right.
10 votes for.
Thank you very much. Well, I'll try my luck on one further one then. Item 7, Oaks Park High School. I'm sure it used to be called Stanley Park High School. Is that right? The erection of two modular buildings has a dining room and some other buildings. Now this is only come before us because it is on the green belt. The school is on the green belt, but these buildings are within the curtilage of the school, so there's no further erosion of the green belt. There's one representation who asks about parking, but this isn't associated with any increase in size of the school, and asks whether these buildings will be available for the public to use. They won't. So again, my question to the committee is, are you satisfied that on the basis of the paperwork before us, we can agree this without need of formal presentation from officers and debate?
Sorry, Chair.
Okay.
Apologies, Chair. I've got to come in here again because when the school was originally built, the planning conditions were that the footprint would be the footprint based on that, and it would not increase. Now, I know that it says, and I sat on, so perhaps I should declare an interest. I sat on the design panel for that, and for 5 years, we went through the whole process of having that new school got up there, and there was a huge discussion around what could and couldn't be built, and it had to be on the existing footprint, and there was an assurance given via the original planning conditions that the green belt would not be incurred into. Now, I'm just wondering, we're going to go to the Secretary of State on this, obviously, because we have to, I presume. So I would ask advice on whether do we have to go to the Secretary of State on if we're building a green belt or not? Because I thought we did. They're not temporary buildings, they're.
No, that's the procedure that we need to act.
We can actually make a decision to build on green belt if we so wish,
Yes.
as a council.
Yes, there's certain circumstances which are detailed in the report, which supports the application and the merits of the case.
Okay, because I'm very interested in the sense that I'm a ward councillor, as is not member of this committee, and building a green belt in our ward is a bit contentious. That's all.
Well, correct. The only question I have as chair is, my question to the committee, are you prepared to agree this without the presentation and discussion? Councillor Freddie, are you saying that you're not? Because if so, we're going to have a presentation and we're going to have to discuss it.
Thank you. I'm looking at my fellow ward councillor, Jim.
I would want to, sorry, to keep you up there.
Presentation.
Yeah, I don't feel comfortable.
Sorry.
Okay, right. In that case, we will have to have a presentation from the and Sutton. I've got that.
Excuse me, Chair.
Yeah.
To help proceedings, maybe we could park this to take this as the last piece of business because I don't believe anybody's here to hear it or protest for it. And it would rather grease the rails somewhat for us to move forward to the packed agenda.
Chair.
But that's up to you.
Okay.
Okay, lady, turn.
Okay, right. Well, let's
Back.
Okay, is Sue Kent here? You're Sue Kent. Okay, right. In that case, what is it, we have we got a presentation on this?
Yeah. Thank you, Chair. The application site is Oaks Park High School, which comprises the existing school building situated to the north of the site and associated ground, including playing fields. Planning permission is sought for the erection of a two-storey modular building to provide enhanced dining room facilities and a gym and a single design technology workshop. The application is being reported to committee as it sits within the green belt, and as such, the proposal is a departure from the development plan. On these slides, you can see the picture to the left is the existing sports hall and art block, and this is the outdoor seating area. And this is a further photo of it, and this would be where the two-storey modular building would be located. These are further views of the outdoor seating area, which you can see here. This is where the modular building should be, the 2-storey. And these photos show where the location of the DT block would be. And you can see that it's already all existing hard standing. This is the proposed site plan showing the location of the 2-storey modular building. So this is just here, and that's where we see in the previous photos that the outdoor dining area was. And then we would have the 1-storey workshop here. The closest residential properties to the site are situated in Metcalfe Avenue. However, these properties are set approximately 30 metres away from the workshop, and as such, it's considered that the development would not result in any loss of amenity. And the environmental health team has not raised any objections. This is the proposed elevations of the DT workshop. The walls of the building have a brown wooden finish effect with an access ramp and a raised terrace, but the terrace will be situated away from the residential properties. As you can see on the plan, there are a number of trees adjacent to the site. However, our tree officer has advised he has no objection to the proposed building. You can see here that this is the existing and the proposed elevations for the 2-storey block. You can just see that it would sit here. When you see it compared to the existing school building, which is 3 stories, it's considered that this building is appropriate in scale and design and would not impact on the green belt or the character of the surrounding buildings. This is a more detailed drawing showing the elevations of the 2-storey building, including the dining hall. And this is showing the gym layout. Whilst it's acknowledged that there would be some impact on the openness of the green belt, it's considered that there are very special circumstances exist in this case, and it tilts the planning balance towards accepting this development within the green belt. National policy states that greater weight should be given to educational needs. The proposal will provide much needed modern and additional education facilities. In addition, the proposed buildings would be seen against the existing much larger school building and considered to be subordinate in scale. As outlined in the officer's report, the benefits of providing the new school facilities is considered to outweigh any harm arising from the inappropriate development. As such, the application is recommended for approval. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Any questions to the officer on the presentation she just made? Councillor Crowley.
Thank you. Sorry, 311 and 312, I don't quite understand. We're building the green belt. Why was there no pre-application advice? And why was there not a design and review plan feedback given on the basis of the fact that it is on green belt? I would have thought we would want to cross the T's and dot the I's on this.
The applicant is here if you did want to answer that question, but there is no requirement for anybody to enter into a pre-app discussion with the council, and it is dependent as well to take it to design review panel.
Last thing, is it pretty unusual in your experience, professional experience, that if anybody was going to build on Greenbelt, that they would not come to the council for pre-application vice versa?
Type of development, it's not unusual. On our larger, where it would be a new school or building, maybe on grassland and existing school facilities, then quite often they will come in, but there have been many examples.
Could you give me some of those examples, please?
Wallington Girls, they built quite a few buildings and they're in Greenbelt as well.
So outside the existing footprint, they did.
I just say something. I think we have to be clear here that this site, whilst it's in the greenbelt, is in a very established built up part of the greenbelt of a school, and the proposal is based on existing hard standing, so there is no actual loss of any green actual space itself.
Okay, thank you. Sue Kent, would you like to come to the
Chair, I have a question for officers.
sorry, yeah, okay, yeah.
Thank you. In 5.5 of the report, it refers to concerns about potential future community use. Can officers advise whether if there was a decision to, if the school did want to use the facilities for communal use, whether that would require a new planning application, or if there's any other legislation, perhaps that's 12 legal officers, but there's any other legal requirements for them to get permission to do that. Thank you.
So at the moment, the school are stating that it won't be used by anyone externally, but there is a condition that should they wish to, then they would want to satisfy that condition details.
The version says that a statement to community should be submitted, is that right?
Yeah, can you
Okay.
explain a bit more what that would mean?
The statement of community use would detail hours of operation, which parts of the actual development would be open to the public. And it would hopefully have also details about mitigation, whether there would be parking available for those users, that type of thing.
So would that mean a decision by officers would have to be made on whether that was acceptable?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Sue, thank you very much for coming. Can you just explain to us in what capacity you're here?
I'm Sue Kent. I'm Director of Howard Fairbairn and HK Architects. I'm a chartered architect and we're the agents for the application.
The agents for the application. Thank you very much indeed. If you wanted to say anything to the committee, you've got 4 minutes to do that.
Okay, I'll just address the points that have been raised because
Right.
obviously the planning officer has been sent in the presentation. This is from the head teacher and this was addressing a query that was raised by the planning officer during the lifetime of the application. The facilities address issues for existing pupils and are not to accommodate new pupils. This is why the proposals are not providing extra teaching space, but are targeting shortfalls in social, hall, examination, PE changing, toilets and a DT practical space to target construction skills. However, it is the case that the school is accommodating extra pupils so that these shortfalls in provision will be exacerbated further should these not be addressed. It should be noted that the school is already committed to the extra pupils regardless of the outcome of this planning application. So to address Councillor Shields' comments about the 2010 approval or whenever it was, the school has actually enlarged its role since then because of demographics of the community, the local community. So notwithstanding that, they are short on space. The original design was also incredibly, it was innovative, but it was also incredibly short of communal space. The school have subsequently built a covered canopy to provide some external eating areas. But if you were to go there, there is no dining hall. It's a fantastic kitchen, but there's no dining hall. And that is a problem for the school. And then the dining hall itself can double up as examination space, which they're desperately short of. And of course, the curriculum has expanded in that time considerably and diversified. And I would reiterate the point that the buildings are totally over hard surfaced area at the moment. So we are re-providing any sustainable drainage area, but we are not encroaching into the green area. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Any questions anyone wants to ask of Sue? Councillor McCoy.
Thank you. I had 2 sons that used to attend the school, not anymore. I asked them about their dining facilities, and there was somewhere indoors that they used to go and they thought it was adequate, but they said it was adequate because they were able to eat in the atrium area, which is a large open area, at the time. Has that changed? Is there a reason why that's changed?
There is an atrium area, and that is where the current dining is. If you looked at it in relation to the school role, it is desperately inadequate, absolutely inadequate. Lunchtime was probably over 2 or 3 sittings. You know, it's not all one big melee, but even so, it is desperately inadequate.
Okay, any other questions we want to ask? Councillor O'Reilly,
Ken, thank you for that. It's interesting. Just to say, when the school was originally built, it was built on the open plan concept. It was a new idea. It was a new design. There were It was based on Swedish model of education. There wasn't even a staff room. I don't even know if that's the staff room's bit more in now. The idea was everyone would mix. The whole thing was a different way of doing things. And there was a meeting area, as Councillor McCoy said. I've been there many times to see it. So I'm surprised considered it down, sort of where do we, there's a cafeteria area, and then there were places in front of it where people could eat. Has that now been changed then? Has that been turned into classroom space or something or not?
No, the atrium still exists, but it is, by the time you allow the circulation, you imagine children at lunchtime circulating around. It still exists, but it's just no way would you class that as a dining room for a school of, 1100, 1200 pupils.
No, I accept that. But a lot of what the head teacher has said are not necessarily material planning considerations. The issue is to do with what was originally set out for the terms of the plan of the school, which was in 2010, and where we are now. If you're telling me they've changed the way that the school now operates, that this is now the school to operate properly is now dependent upon this, then I can see the point. If you're saying it's still operating on the same basis, I'm struggling.
It is not operating on the same basis. You are right in that the school has changed its name. It's now part of the Cheam Academy network, and it's known as Oaks Park. Stanley Park was not faring well, and I don't think the Swedish model worked particularly well. So it has changed. It still has the atrium. It still has areas known as World and Technology and various other things. But but of course the curriculum too has expanded. We have a lot more BTEC rather than just straight GCSEs and A levels. So it has had to diversify.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, any other questions to? Okay, look, we need to now move into a debate. So, for speed, Councillor Crowley, do you want to oppose this?
No, I don't want to oppose it.
Okay, right. Does anyone want to? No, okay, can we move to
Let's do a bit of debate. We just do a bit of debate and sum up maybe. I would just say thank you very much for the presentation. If that's okay, Chair. Thank you very much for the presentation and for your comments, Ms. Kent. I'm the other ward councillor that the school sits in. I wouldn't have felt comfortable just agreeing to say yes on a, pass it through. I think it's right. It's come to committee for a reason. These things are meant to. We've had a hearing. It's had its hearing. We've thrashed it out. Thank you for your question. That's very helpful. It is good to see the plan. It's good to see where it sits in relation to the nearest residential houses, etc., etc. I think you have made a compelling case between you, and I'm happy to vote in favour.
Well, your point's very well made, Councillor. Okay, so we'll move to.
Thank you.
Yeah, Councillor Eric Allen. Councillor Tim Brody.
4.
Councillor Sam Cumber.
4.
Councillor Tim Foster. 4. Councillor Amy Haldane.
4.
Councillor Patrick O'Connor.
4.
Councillor Tony Shields.
4.
Councillor Taylor. 4. Councillor Jane McCoy.
4.
And Councillor Richard Clifton.
4.
And Brody.
Okay, thank you very much, everyone. Now to move on, we've got 3 other items on our agenda, all of which I think are going to require a fair bit of discussion. So I hope we can deal with these with dispatch. I mean, my usual appeal to councillors to be concise in their contributions. So we now move on to the energy from waste management facility. This was withdrawn from the June meeting of the committee due to the representation having received. But representation and a response from the applicant have been included in the published papers for this meeting, along with a covering report written by officers, and they're in the main agenda packed. The original papers from the June meeting of the committee, which I think are very important, including a written statement of the application, have also been recirculated to members, to be found in the supplemental agenda 3rd dispatch. Now, we're going to hear a presentation from officers, and just to be clear, we're also going to hear from on behalf of objectors, Councillor Dave Chill and Grace Platt, to share the 4 minutes. I hope it has been explained to you that you will share the 4 minutes I should just say, please, thank you very much. I don't accept interruptions, public gathering. Our standing orders require, I'll say this for everyone who's going to speak tonight, because there's quite a lot of speakers. Our standing orders require that people are limited to 4 minutes. Now, the reasons for this are that there is a requirement that we should, in most of the cases that we consider as a committee, there are two parties, and at the end of the day, they disagree with each other, and we have to take a decision one way or the other. But we're required by law to ensure parity of opportunity to present themselves to us, for which reason everybody's limited to 4 minutes. So we have an objector, Councillor Vochill and Grace Pat will share the 4 minutes. Councillor Massey will speak as the ward councillor, he has 4 minutes, and the applicant also has 4 minutes to speak to us, and councillors can ask them questions. After that, we will move to a discussion of the issue, and then we will take a decision. So let's start with the presentation.
Thank you, Chair. The application site is situated within the energy recovery facility site and is bound to the east and west by a distribution warehouse and the main ERF building. Planning permission is sought for the erection of a slab and diesel storage tank for fuel from mobile plants around the site. The application is being reported to committee as a departure from the local plan as the site sits within metropolitan open land. These are photographs of the site. You can see here the existing diesel tank. You can see behind it is the storage and distribution warehouse, which is the Prologis development. On this photograph here, the application site is part of this grassed area. This is the existing layout. You have the main building here of the ERF. You've got access roads and you've got the existing fuel tank. And this is the proposed site plan. Again, the existing fuel tank and the green rectangle is the proposed storage tank. These are the proposed elevations. The tank will be constructed of steel measuring 3 metres in depth, 2.4 metres in width and 2.9 metres high, with a 4.1 high single bed pipe. The applicant has confirmed that the diesel stored in the existing tank is used for two purposes: to fuel mobile plants around the site and to bring the energy recovery facility up to operating temperature during startups. This is a further drawing showing the site layout. This is the main ERF building. You have the Prologis development site over here, and this green mark here is where the proposed tank is going. The proposal has been assessed against the backdrop of the ERF building and the larger warehouse building to the west. There are limited public views into the site, and given the relatively small size of the proposal compared to the adjacent development and the site's industrial appearance, it is not considered that the proposal would harm the character and appearance of the area, nor would it have an impact on the openness of the MOL. The site sits within the Benton farmland sink, however, it is located away from areas of high ecological value and comprised of recently established grassland landscaping. The senior biodiversity officer raised no objection to the proposal, stating it is unlikely to have any direct impacts on the habitats and species which the site is designated for. It should also be noted that there's been no objection from Environmental Health, the Environment Agency or Highways. As such, the application is recommended for approval subject to conditions in the draft decision notice.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. So as I can understand, this new tank is required because of a change from red diesel to white diesel. And so can I just confirm that there won't be any changes? There's nothing to do with changes in capacity?
No, that's right. There's no changes. This application is not register any changes in capacity.
Must be. Must be.
Where's the new tank? Thank you, Councillor Sutton.
So
Yeah.
just to clarify my understanding, and please correct me as I go. So the law has changed that no longer allows red diesel to be used by vehicles on site. Currently, red diesel is used to provide the fuel, same fuel for the burner and the vehicles. In the future, vehicles on site need to use white diesel. So the choice for the operator, as I understand it, is to use white diesel from the same tank to fuel the burner in startup and hence pay white diesel prices, or to construct a second tank to allow vehicles on site to be fueled with white diesel, or I assume then continue red diesel in the existing tank to provide fuel for the startup, or at the same time to switch to furnace. So it is my understanding that this application has nothing to do with additional capacity.
It must. So now
We established that.
no, we haven't. We've established quite the opposite.
No,
At this moment in time, we are asking questions of the
But-
officer. Taylor, will you please attend to that?
So it's nothing to do with additional burning capacity. It's about fuel types. Yeah, okay. So just another couple of points that were very helpfully raised by one of the objectors. So there's no change in the planning permission requirements because the fuel type used to fuel burner is changing. Is that correct? Is that?
That's correct.
Okay. The metropolitan open land issue, I think you've addressed previously because it's seen within the backdrop of the existing incinerator site. So the change in metropolitan open land condition is established, and that's not a material objection we can make. In terms of the risk of impact and spillages, which I think has been raised elsewhere, the tank is described as self-bunded, which means it has dual walls and any spills are held within the dual walls of the tank. So that's how it provides protection against spillage. Is that correct? Compared to the picture, actually, it's very helpful. Compared to the picture of the existing tank, which is bunded by a brick wall, and any fuel spills are contained with the brick wall. Is that correct?
That's correct, and the applicants, they are here for the technicalities of.
Okay, sorry.
So later, but yeah, that's it.
Yeah, we can answer these questions of the applicant.
Okay.
Okay, Councillor McCoy.
Thank you. I just wanted to, two questions. It says there'd be an extra 6 vehicle movements on average, I think. Will these further vehicle movements be required to comply with the conditions imposed previously on the sort of existing vehicle movements, i.e. to use thermal wave only? And my second question is, in the report, 4.2 of the original report references the existing storage tank has runoff directed to existing drains. Do we know where these drains discharge? It might not be relevant to the new tank, but I'm just concerned about where these things go when it changes fuel.
Yes, it directs towards the existing drains and interceptor. So I don't know the technicalities of that, but again, the applicants could probably clarify that for you.
Okay, we'll
Conditions on the vehicle movements?
We'll have a look. We'll just double check that for you.
Okay, we're starting to get an agenda. Issues read the applicant. Okay, now, who else? Well, the Councillor Bradley.
can I ask the officers then, just for transparency, what is the capacity? I know it's in the thing, but I want transparency. What is the capacity of the existing tank, and what is the capacity of the new tank?
I'll just look that up.
Thank you.
Should we also ask the applicant to note that this?
I want to ask the officer. Thank you. And times the application's gone to.
You'll need some notice of these, that question, won't you? Okay, right, any other question from any other councillor, or shall we move on and hear from the objectors? No?
Can I get my answer?
Well, I think that you're asking the question, which seems to me to be, rather sort of detailed and technical. And we'll take off.
Doing a presentation, that's what I'm asking you.
Well, I just thought if you haven't got that immediately to hand, I don't want to hold up the proceedings of the committee while we, wait while you check it. You have to,
So we've got the details of the proposed tank, which has a capacity of 11,000 cubic square meters.
That is ridiculous. 11,000 cubic meters, holders.
Right, okay.
That's 1,000 times.
So are we saying, can I ask the officers,
Bigger than your incinerator.
please, Councillor Matty, are we saying that the existing tank is being reduced by 11,000 cubic meters or whatever it is, cubic litres, because we've been told that there isn't any additional capacity? We've just been told that. So is there, no, hang on, Chair, is there additional capacity or not?
I think that these are questions that are best asked to the,
Hang on, Chair, the officers are recommending grant on the basis of the information that they've got.
yes.
And I'm asking the officers straightforward questions on the size of the tanks, right? Which I'm entitled to ask the officers because they've got the application in front of them. They're the ones who are saying, recommend grant on that basis. We have heard after Councillor Taylor asked that there would be no additional capacity.
Point of order, please. Can I make a point of order?
Yeah.
The clarification was based on additional capacity for burning, not for fuel holding.
Okay.
So the question was related to the
So-
additional fuel holding capacity is not related
Capacity
to
has increased. You said that.
So it's an extra two.
Well,
the holding fuel capacity was the.
Has increased. But I'm just surprised we don't know. That's what I'm asking the question.
yeah, but can we, look, I do want to add to this though, that my understanding from what you said was that, we have a tank which is, holding diesel, red diesel, in the past held red diesel, which was used for two purposes, I read the paper. One was to start up the furnace, and the other was for vehicles moving around the site. So there's then the abolition or the banning of red diesel. Those two purposes are now separated. You need a tank to provide diesel for vehicles moving around the site. You need a tank for a different type of fuel, which is used for starting out. So, I mean, my question to Viridor would come is, that would seem to me that the reasons for the two tanks are related to separation of the two different purposes, and it doesn't necessarily mean that there's any increase in capacity or whatever. But anyhow, capacity would be dealt with on the license.
But there is a company how it could help. Since 11,000 cubic meters.
We are at this point in on questions to the officers. So I'll go around the committee this way and ask whether people have got any other questions they want to put to the officers. But can I ask you to be fair to the officers, and if there is some technical question about this, that should really go to Viridor, so let it go to Viridor.
I just want to comment that the application is for an installation of a slab and storage tank, which refers, facilitates the existing use. While I understand the councillor's questions about the existing capacity of the tank and what is being proposed, may I ask you that we don't have that technicality, but we just want to be sure that that's quite a technical question. And if you could ask that to Viridor, that we'd be appreciative of that. But what we're dealing with here, when the application was received, we're determining a new storage tank in relation to an existing use. In terms of the capacity, that is not controlled by this planning application. That's controlled by the environmental agency permit.
No, that's not true.
To save them £66,000.
Right, let's go on. Councillor Allen, do you want, now we're talking about questions to officers. Ask the
Yes,
question.
Chair. I think Councillor Taylor is wrong in saying that there won't be any increase in capacity, because if you're putting in a second tank, which is going to increase the capacity, then that's given. What I want to know is, why do you need that second tank? Why can you not just replace the existing tank with one which is divided between two fuels? as you have in petrol stations, as you have in fuel lorries, they all have tanks which have got separations in them. So you don't really need an additional tank. You just need to replace the one you've got with one which is more suitable for the usage you want.
Again, it's a question for Beardor to confirm, but I would assume that the mixing of fuels is not that simple in this case.
But you're not mixing fuels. If you have a tank
That really is the Viridor though.
I really must say that I think that the planning officers have dealt with this on planning grounds. And yeah, let us ask Viridor these questions when we get to Viridor. Right, Councillor Shields, do you have any questions?
Back to my old trade, as it were. Height times depth times width of a tank. It's around and about 2,088 litres, give it or take it.
20,000.
Sorry, 20,000 litres, 2 tonnes.
Okay.
So we've got 20,000 litres. So that's sure when we say when the committee's hearing there's no extra capacity, is exactly what they're hearing, because it's freeing up the capacity in tank A by building tank B. Tank A will be filled with whatever with red diesel, furnace flame, I think it's called. So the capacity is being increased by 2,000.
Can I clarify again, point of order? So my question was related to capacity for burning, the incinerator burning. So the question I was clarifying, the point I was clarifying was a link that was being made between the fuel tanks and the incinerators burning capacity, as in the expansion, the increase in annual burning tons of waste able to be burnt. The point was that the planning application is not related to that, and it doesn't enable additional burning at the facility. It enables additional fuel to be held. That was the clarification. I was potentially sloppy on that. However, that's the clarification requested.
It frees up capacity in tank A for substantially more burning, doesn't it? It cannot do anything other than what I've said.
Have you got any questions of the officers?
I thought it's been helpful by coming up with some sort of capacity of the tank, which I thought would have been in the notes. But well, the question is, therefore, is 20,000 litres going to be taken away from tank A? No, it's going to be remaining tank A and be filled with furnace flame, allowing more burning.
Yeah, spot on. Yeah. What I'm talking about, you've heard it. Yeah, the magic cannot be created or destroyed.
If they, can I have your attention, please? Thank you. That of course would be if they were allowed under their licence conditions to do more burning. Councillor Crowley, you've got a question. Okay, Councillor Foster, do you have any questions? On this side of the table, does anyone have any further questions? Councillor Gilmer.
Just in fact, just any sort of biodiversity loss mitigation measures that could be put in place, just in that trying to see.
Well, overall of South London?
Just, I'm aware well it is.
I'm not sure I follow the question.
Oh, that's in relation to loss of the green space.
There isn't any conditions related to any replacement. The biodiversity officer has looked at this. It's not a significant area compared to the rest of the site in the area where the species that may perceive the same harm targeted. So I think in this case it wouldn't be necessary.
Right, okay, if there's nothing else that people want to raise, I'm going to invite Councillor David Chill and Grace Platt to come to the table. And you have 4 minutes between you. Right, up here.
As a resident of Hatton Bridge with 2 children under 4 and a degree in environmental sciences, there are many things I wish to discuss about the incinerator. Be they the rampant emissions breaches, an alarming 5 in the last 6 weeks alone, the failure to connect to Esden, the ever elusive Beddington farmlands regeneration, and the rapacity for pollution. But as this is planning, we must focus it entirely on the proposal. From my understanding, the application is seeking to add a supplementary storage unit for 11,000 litres of white diesel. Whilst it is true that this will not be used for furnace ignition, point 4.1 illustrates that the entire 75,000 litre tank that is currently there will be converted entirely to this purpose from its historical shared purpose. What officers appear to have omitted, therefore, is that there will be a noticeable increase in the capacity of ignition fuel. A circa 15% increase in storage is being asked for, with 6 extra deliveries per annum, where only 3 should be required based on the diesel plant requirements set out in the supporting documents and the installation of separate tanks. How then do we reconcile these extra deliveries with the increased capacity if we do not account for the application which is also being made to the Environment Agency to increase the permit for waste excavation? These applications and their impacts cannot be viewed in isolation. What we are witnessing is Viridor gearing up to enable its bolster incineration operation, clearly being overlooked by what I can expect to be predominantly Lib Dem councillors who ushered through the incinerator itself. The facts remain that Viridor is applying to increase its waste burning capacity by 10%, building on the previously secured 15%, supplemented by extra vehicle movements to achieve this through the application you are overseeing tonight. I ask you to consider, if Viridor does secure its permit from the Environment Agency, how will it fulfil this capacity, if not through the application you are seeking to approve tonight? If you, like me, agree it will need this, then I implore you to deny this application on that basis.
How long do I have left, please? How many minutes might I have?
About just over 2 minutes.
Thank you.
2 minutes and 3 seconds. Off you go.
Thank you. The structure is proposed on metropolitan open land for storage of materials not necessary for the current functioning of the operation. The application has made no assessment of considering policy SI2 of the London Plan, which requires development to make the fullest contribution to the mitigation of and adaptation to climate change and minimising CO2. Given the facility has operated without the need for extra fuel storage capacity, why is it needed now? How can there be no material increase in emissions if an additional 11,000 litres of diesel storage is proposed? It is unclear that the storage of hazardous materials can be done so safely. Storage is being proposed on a site that already had a fire deemed a serious incident in 2019 and was also subject to a question being asked earlier this year if it were the site of another recent fire. Additional overbearing traffic should be considered against the stated need by the council to cap and reduce vehicle movements. Why is additional diesel needed for plant machinery when an EV fleet could be used at the facility? It generates electricity there. This application opens up a route to burn more furnace flame and proceeds a further permit application to the Environment Agency by the operator to increase the amount of material burned. I conclude that councillors permitting dirty diesel may settle their awkwardness by holding on to silver-tongued advice. However, residents know that these councillors will have lost their credibility for zero carbon, lost their credibility for reducing emissions, and lost their credibility for cutting air pollution and stopping recyclables being burnt there. I can't believe, honestly, I can't believe that you want to grant this and own the harm caused to your reputations, caused to the environment itself, and ultimately the health of children and residents. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I think I'm the only councillor remaining that actually sat on a planning application for this. I actually sat on it twice in 2013. And at that point, I was staggered by the lack of knowledge of even the Viridor representatives on that evening, who didn't know exactly how much waste they were going to burn. All they could tell me was that they had to burn 280,000 tonnes per year. This plant had to be running 7 days a week, 24 hours a day. They didn't even know the cost of the electricity which they were going to generate from it. And likewise, they were very proud of the fact that they said Sutton was becoming a borough with more recycling being carried out. Because there was more recycling being carried out, the 280,000 tonnes which they had then wasn't going to be sufficient because half of it could be recycled. And the very point I raised at that time was, how are you going to satisfy your need for waste? You're going to have to truck in more and more waste. And this is exactly what we're seeing now. And the fact that you're going to have this bonus fuel here to help you burn even more is because you want to go even beyond that 280,000 tonnes. I think it's disgraceful. And I don't think we should be allowing this to go ahead because all we're doing is.
Alan, any other questions?
This is disgraceful. They're allowing all this.
Absolutely, I do agree with that. Thank you.
Can I pick up, Alan? Look, for goodness sake, we ask questions and then we have. Okay, now, anybody else has got any other questions? And I think we're wasting time otherwise. Okay, Councillor Shields.
Good evening. Question to you, Councillor Shields, we're in college you're anything like that. The submission for extra burning, obviously, which could be the reason for the extra capacity of furnace flame, which is the reason we're having the tank A. Are you aware of any submission to the Environment Agency from this authority? Are you aware if this authority is backing this application for more burning or not backing this application?
I'm unaware as to whether they are backing the application
Or not backing?
it.
So am I. There's two of us in the same room.
Three.
It interests me, Councillor, that there appears to be a permit for an increased capacity to burn more, and I just think it upsets me to consider that there are families living hundreds of meters from the incinerator, and indeed people living in Bedford, the eco-friendly zero-carbon development was built pre-existing the incinerator.
So is it not right and proper that the authority has a view on the burning of extra materials? At the moment, it sits silent.
Absolutely, it should. Make it very clear that they don't wish for that to occur.
Thank you.
Can I just clarify the policy that you mentioned there, on policy S12 of the London plan, that refers specifically to major developments, and this is not major development.
It's within a major.
It's within a major, yes, support.
That policy is directed towards major development applications, which is.
Yes, okay, I mean, look, it's not a fact matter, it's about the Environment Agency permit. I mean, just for your information, my understanding is the council, that there was an application made to increase burning on the council was opposed to that. Right, now, any other questions? Councillor Boyd.
Thank you. The Environment Agency has been referenced here, and Chair, you've pointed out the difference between the planning aspects of this that this committee is related to decide upon, and then there's the permit and the operation of the ERF, which is largely determined by the Environment Agency. Whether we agree with them or not, they are deemed as the expert authority on that, as they were on the original permission for the ERF, which was the movement to ERF was agreed by four London boroughs, which encompassed Labour, Conservative and Liberal Democrat councils, and they went on the recommendation of the Environment Agency. So in this case, are you saying that the Environment Agency should not be given weight in those sort of issues?
They've been asked.
I would like to hope the Environment Agency can speak with a bit more clarity and critique on the matter, considering that when you increase, as described, when you increase capacity of fuel within a facility, it gives the opportunity for permits to be agreed to meet the fuel availability.
Thank you, and obviously that question is being put to the Environment Agency, and they will be decided outside of this committee. So thank you for clarifying that.
I do. Okay, right, shall we hear from Councillor Massey then? Come on. Thank you.
Get it over with.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen.
You've got 4 minutes, Councillor.
No, I haven't, because you haven't heard what I've got to say first. Initially, you picked up on Councillor Crowley's what you thought perhaps unsuitability to judge this matter. And I would like to talk about what I consider the unsuitability of 2 members of the panel here. One being yourself, the person that forced an investigation into the links between John Drage, your friend, and Viridor over the donations given by Viridor to charity. Because you cited that he was a man of God, and therefore there could be nothing on flight. So that's the first point.
7 years ago,
Yeah, oh, yeah.
I mean,
Corruption goes on.
you-
Look,
you-
look, do you want me to speak?
Okay.
Or you
Yeah,
gonna-
I want you to sit down
I'm
and
not gonna
speak
talk.
about this issue.
Okay.
You're not going to.
This
speak
is
about-
relevant because you are unsuitable to judge this. The
Right.
second point is about Councillor McCoy, who is on record in a council question to Miss Maeve Tomlinson, who said that it's a well-known fact that
Right.
incinerators don't cause air pollution, they improve air quality.
Are you going
So here we go, let's go then. Off we
to,
go.
go on, get on.
We've got the people that did the presentation, the non-technical people who've come to the conclusion that the tank is 11,000 cubic meters. So it's roughly, according to them, bigger than the actual incinerator. So this shows the complete disregard for facts and figures that is prevalent in this council. Now, let's go through some of the points. The actual objective by Viridor is to save money and burn more waste. And the way that they're going to do it is that they burn around 1 million litres a year of currently red diesel. Now, red diesel is a refined diesel fuel, which is ultra low sulfur. That means it has a sulfur content of around 10 parts per million. But they want to burn around 960,000 litres of furnace flame fuel, which is 1,000 parts per million fuel. And the reason they want to do that is because the duty on furnace flame fuel is 10 pence per litre. The duty on white diesel, which they'd have to switch to because since April 2022, you can't use red diesel on an industrial site. It's about 50 pence. So if we take the difference between the two on duty is 40 pence, if we multiply it by 1 million litres a year, they're trying to save about £400,000 a year by burning an extremely dirty fuel. So this is essentially what the application is all about. The tank allows them to run their forklift trucks, their cranes and on-site vehicles without using furnace flame fuel, which you can't use because it will ruin their engines. So let us try and understand what Vera wants to do. And the idea, against contrary to the basic laws of physics, that matter cannot be created or destroyed, that the council is trying to argue that by putting in an extra tank doesn't mean it's going to have extra capacity, is completely ridiculous. Because obviously, if you have 2 baths in your house, you're going to fill them up with more water than if you have a single, right? And I cannot. Pardon?
You just not have a bath. You don't have
But I'm saying if you do have a second bath or a third bath, you are increasing capacity. So the idea that
Only let you fill the bath half full.
but the idea that this, the idea, sorry.
Right, your 4 minutes are up.
Okay, haven't.
Councillor,
No, you came in to disrupt me because you didn't want to answer the question. Now, can I have my 4 minutes, please?
started speaking.
Yeah, well, no, because you brought a point of order up with Councillor Crowley, which I brought out to you.
You were timed from when you started speaking. Councillor.
Oh, yeah.
Sorry, thank you.
That's all right.
Thank you. Just a point of order. Councillor Matty has misrepresented a statement of mine, taken out of context, which is done over and over again. This is a good opportunity for me just to confirm that that is a misrepresentation, and that's Councillor Matty to withdraw it.
Could you explain then, what did you say then? Did you say? So basically, you can't say
we are going to stick to the point that we are discussing. Councillor Taylor.
I do have a technical question. You may be able to answer. I may well ask the Viridor because you are an expert.
No, I'm not. I'm just a man in the street.
You're very keen.
No, I'm not.
You're involved and very
No,
knowledgeable.
I'm not. I'm just a bloke in the street.
Very detailed paper.
Yeah, no.
The furnace fuel is used during startup and shutdown of the incinerator.
Not down shut, just switch it off.
Sorry, let me completely right. Apologies. During startup.
It's,
If hypothetically
yeah,
the incinerator to burn more material per year,
yeah.
would it need to shut down and start up more times.
Can I just clarify? Can I just clear up about why you need?
That's not the question I asked.
Yeah, well, you can't, because you made a false assumption, so I can't answer on for. I'll give you the correct information, and then you can ask me the question.
Correct.
The purpose of furnace fuel, which is the dirty high sulfur fuel that Viridor want to use, is to run the auxiliary burners, because when there is a problem in the furnace, you can then run on auxiliary burners. You run on about 50% of the power output while you rectify the problem. And this is when we are seeing these big spikes, which have been referred to by Dave Chill, in emissions of toxic emissions. So the object is so that when you're running a furnace, or you've got anything, refractory bricks in or anything like that, you have to maintain a certain temperature, and you use auxiliary burners. And that is the purpose of the furnace flame fuel. At the moment, up to April 2022, Viridor were using the red diesel, which attracted the lower fuel duty. They now wish to switch to the very, very low duty but dirty fuel. And that is basically what this application is. And it's one that hasn't even been considered by officers. And that's why I feel that the whole thing should be rejected. And as has been rightly pointed out, it does seem bizarre that a plant that is generating, according to Viridor, 23 megawatts of power for export hasn't got the ability to power its vehicles from the electricity that it generates, and wants to bring in diesel to power the thing. I mean, and this is from, and this is in the Section 106 agreement that was given for the incinerator. It was so much per year of the substantial, I think it's about £190,000 a year, proportion that was meant to be used on electric vehicles, which plainly is not going to be the case, because they want to stop their engines being used with very heavy diesel, which would wreck their engines. So
Okay.
do we got the idea about this?
Are there any other questions for Councillor Matty? I'm really anxious to hear from. Councillor Shields.
Good evening, Mr. Matty. If we use the assumption of 1 million litres a year of diesel burn, what I can give you your great knowledge, the harmful emissions of 1 million litres of clean diesel,
Yeah.
and that of 1 million litres of furnace flame. What will the difference? What can the people, if granted, this separate tank will facilitate the burning of furnace flame?
Well, if we consider carbon dioxide to be a pollutant, which according to the Environment Agency is, the burning and Viridor, I hope you can correct me if I've got it wrong, but according to my calculations, if you burn 1 million litres of diesel, you're going to probably, and this is the same for furnace flame fuel, you're probably going to put about 4,500 to 5,000 tonnes of CO2 into the atmosphere, but I haven't got the exact figures. I think it's about, it could drop to as low as 2,500 tonnes, but to put that in perspective, it will develop more CO2 than the 5 times more CO2 than the CO2 that they hope to save by powering the SDEM from the incinerator. So that is the principal polluting gas. But obviously, with what's happened since 2013, when Viridor got planning permission, is that there's been constant work on diesel, basic diesel, red diesel and white diesel, identical bar at the top, in order to bring the sulfur content down. And as far as I know, ultra low sulfur diesel is around 0.001% sulfur, whereas furnace flame fuel, the manufacturer's data that I've seen is about 0.1% sulfur, which is about 1,000 parts per million. So basically, you're talking about 100 times sulfur content. Now, to try and see what's happening, when these gas cylinders seem to be getting through Viridor's selection system, what seems to be happening is that if you look at the data that Viridor released, there's a huge spike in certain emissions, and this obviously can't come from a few canisters of barbecue gas, LNG, liquefied LPG, liquefied petroleum gas, or butane or propane, or one of these other gases. So the conclusion is this is probably coming from, as a result, running on the auxiliary burners. If they're running, if we degrade the quality of the fuel in order to save Viridor this estimated £400,000 a year, that we do run a risk of more exceedances, or when these exceedances take place, then the air will be more toxic. And what my area of concern is the fact that the Sutton Council managed to secure planning permission for a school 700 metres from the incinerator, and because they pretended in the air quality assessment that there wasn't going to be an incinerator, this school does not.
I think we're moving.
Ask questions, or do you want to answer?
I think we're moving on to.
There is no air filtration.
I wasn't the guest. Okay, well, I thank you very much, Councillor Matthew.
I'm finished. Yes, anybody?
I suggest we'll hear from Viridor now.
I'm very,
It's got a question. It's a man, yeah.
I'm very interested in the amount of air pollution that is caused by possible use of furnace flame.
Yeah.
Now, are you saying that I didn't quite understand your answer. Are you saying that with normal diesel, it's 2,500 to 5,000 tonnes
Yeah.
of CO2?
Yeah.
If it was furnace flame, it would be 100 times.
No. It's exactly as far as carbon dioxide is concerned. They've got roughly the same amount of carbon in both fuels, so they will be, to all in effects, the amount of carbon dioxide emissions will be. It's just all the nasty bits that come off. I mean, the thing is that the government has invested a fortune, and it's put real pressure on refineries to produce a very, very high quality diesel, as far as diesel goes. And what we're trying to do is or Viridor trying to do, is turn the clock back 13 years.
What does that knock out of this? How can we ask how much carbon a car would emit a year, roughly? What relevance is that? I'm entitled to ask that. If you don't want me to ask it, then you can have a go at me after.
I'd like as chair just to interpolate that I'm getting a bit concerned about timing now, and we've got other things on.
I'm more concerned about the health of our residents, Chair. I'm not really concerned about your time.
But I just
carry on.
Just make this general point.
Right.
The-
Can you be brief?
Yeah, okay.
Thank you very much.
What happened was that the Mayor of London did a report into mortality rates in the incinerators, and the people he got to do it were the same company that carried out the air quality assessment for the Hackbridge School. And his conclusion was that if you live in the proximity of an incinerator, there should be at least three extra deaths per year living next to the incinerator. Now, I know this is disputed by the South London Waste Partnership, but then they would say that. But yeah, when they ever meet. But the point is when you have small children who've got growing lung capacity, who have fantastically high heart rate, who run around in playgrounds, it is completely irresponsible to do something which is going to degrade air pollution, right? And I think that Councillor McCoy should come in now and explain why she believes that incinerators actually improve air quality, and then perhaps we can get her views.
Yes, okay, and I'm anxious that we can keep on to this issue of the tank, which is the planning issue that is before us tonight. So I'd like to suggest that we now give very law because I think that's that's the right thing. Thank you very much indeed, Councillor Mack, for your help with this meeting tonight. Thank you. Now I've got down here from I've got Philip Eyre, Director of Operations, David O'Callaghan, Plant Manager, and Management Gently Planning Manager. Are those people here?
Yes.
Jolly good. Well, thank you very much indeed.
The more you burn, the more you earn. Yes, you do introductions because
Right, well, thank you very much indeed for coming. And can I ask the councillors and then probably can we please thank the representatives of Very Door for coming here tonight? Please do not. Please do not.
What's been done for Bennington?
Please, I'd like to suggest some standards in terms of courtesy. Thank you very much indeed. I know you don't understand the term courtesy, but that's all. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you very much indeed for coming. Now, you've got 4 minutes if you'd like to speak to the committee, as other speakers have. And after that, councillors will be able to ask you questions. Thank you very much. So who's got? Perhaps you can just tell me. I did interview, but I don't know who is who. Perhaps you just tell me your names.
Hi, I'm Philip Eyre. I'm Director of Operations.
Yeah. Thank you, Philip.
Hi, I'm David O'Callaghan. I'm the Plant Manager at Bennington ERO.
Thank you.
I'm Mandy Jetty, Planning Advisor for Burial, including this particular
Right.
slide.
Okay. Yeah, you've got 4 minutes. Right. Off you go.
Thank you for the officers who have presented the planning application. We can cover the proposal before you at this time.
Speak up a little bit, because I really don't. I do have a hearing problem. Thank you.
Is that?
That's okay, yes.
Thank you to the officers who have presented the planning application before you. We're here to answer any questions that you have, rather than revisit the presentation which has already been carried out by the officers. So we're quite happy to answer questions to be put to us.
Right, you don't have a statement to us, okay? Right, Councillor Taylor.
Okay. So there are a couple of points made by Councillor Matty. As he says, he knows nothing about incinerators. He's not a technical man. He's not knowledgeable. So I'd like to just double check some of the things that he said. So it sounds as though, and we've kind of surmised that the necessity that tankers choose to change fuel types. At the same time, you're choosing to change from conventional diesel to furnace fuel, furnace flame. The suggestion was that the salt content is the key part of furnace flame. It's cheaper. That seems relatively reasonable to do that at that point. But the concern is on the pollution implications. Do you have any figures on the difference in salt content between the red diesel to use at the moment, diesel and furnace flame, just to help us with understanding that the impact of that?
The permit that is currently issued by the Environment Agency for the facility sets out the sulfur content for the site. The existing fuel that's been used on the site and the diesel which is proposed for the site and the furnace flame which is proposed for the site are all within the limits that are set out within the existing permit.
So no, that's fine. So to be clear, in our terms, we're not able to consider that because it's compliant with the Environment Agency permit and requirements. Is that correct? Okay. And can I just ask officers to confirm that in terms of the material reasons for considering the application, that because that's considered by the Environment Agency, that's not a material grounds for considering on the ground on the application.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Right, okay, Councillor Foster.
You have made an application to the Environment Agency to increase the tonnage from 347,000 tonnes to 382,000 tonnes. Is that correct? Is that correct? And will that involve an increase in the sulphur? As you just said, not in proportional terms, but in general terms, because you're not burning at the moment, are you? You're not burning 382,000 tonnes at the moment. You're burning 347,000 tonnes.
The waste throughput is not directly related to the amount of fuel oil burnt. Right, fuel oil is only used, as has been stated, on startup and at shutdown. It's not used.
And what about supplementary burning?
For supplementary burning, but we won't be running longer hours. So there are no more with the model seconds.
So this
Availability will be the same.
this increased capacity, the use of the white diesel, has got nothing to do with your application to increase the tonnage.
No, correct.
Right.
The increased capacity, while there will be increased sort of storage capacity on the site, does not mean we'll be using more diesel. To use the 2 baths reference, you had 2 baths in your house. You wouldn't go out of a bath in one and then go out of a bath in the other, would you? You'd use one bath.
We're using, you got diesel in one tank for one job. Currently,
Currently, the 1 tank services both.
yeah,
But now
now you're using 2
we're
tanks.
separating it because we're going to use 2 different fuel times.
Yeah.
We're not going to use more fuel because we've got extra storage capacity. We just are introducing an extra tank for a different type of fuel.
Why are the vehicular movements increasing then?
Yeah, what are they gonna run on? Plain air?
Vehicle movements on site won't change.
You've increased.
Councillor, can I ask people in the public gallery to please,
Can I finish my question?
if you finish your question?
Sorry, you're looking to increase the tonnage by 40,000 tonnes. You're saying that's no increase in.
That's not in relation to this application.
You're going to dance on the head of a pin.
So therefore, if an extra 40,000, you're not going to move that stuff around the site. You're not going to use extra diesel to move 40,000 extra tonnes. Have extra capacity for storage. You must be moving more, whether it's storage or whatever.
Your question, whether the Environment Agency issued the permit to increase the tonnage or not, there is still the need for this tank. So that's a completely separate issue and doesn't impact the storage capacity of fuel on the site. Whether that, so hence why this application has come forward even before the determination of the EA permit application. And that's largely led by the need for 2 different fuels to facilitate the existing activity on the site. So that needs to be addressed, irrelevant of the EA tonnage increase application.
Okay, thank you very much. I think that's very clear. Then you need 2 tanks for 2 different types of fuel. Councillor Taylor.
I'm just going to try the counterfactual here. Assuming that the law hadn't changed to restrict the use of red diesel, and you're able to still burn red diesel in the incinerator and in your vehicles, and you were able to receive a permit to burn 500,000 tonnes of fuel a year, would you need to build a larger tank? No. So the tank doesn't need to be bigger to burn more fuel. No. So can I suggest and surmise the opposite, that the bigger tank isn't to burn more rubbish in the incinerator?
What is it for?
Rubbish space. More rubbish. They've had a feng shui consultant now.
Can we allow Viridor to deal with the question, please? Thank you very much. Can I ask people in the public gallery to please keep quiet?
You need to allow us to store
Surreal times.
Can I ask a supplementary question to Councillor Taylor's, please, Chair? Because I found that quite helpful. If that is the case, then why do you need a bigger fuel tank?
We don't need a big fuel tank.
So why is it bigger than?
To store 2 different fuels.
Yes, so why is it so much larger than the one that's already there?
It's not.
This is what we've been told.
It's 11,000 cubic metres.
No.
It's bigger than the incinerator.
No.
The officers have said it is.
Can we please allow Viridor to answer this question?
The current tank is 75,000 litres. The application is for an installation of a tank of 11,000 litres. And the 11,000 litres is sized so that we have minimal fuel deliveries to support that tank in the fueling of our yellow plant that operate only within Sutton.
So that you have fewer deliveries of fuel, which would mean less.
No.
Deliveries. You can get more in one delivery if you've got a bigger tank. You can get more fuel, arrive at the site and be stored.
Then it's ultimately, we're having two tanks to allow us to store diesel fuel. That's the only reason there are two separate tanks.
I think that was made fairly clear that it's two separate tanks. Councillor McCoy, did you want it to come back?
Yes, I just wanted to pick up on the question that the officers couldn't answer. On the existing, and I realise this might not necessarily be directly implication, but I did notice this. It was in the report, so I wanted to ask this question. The existing tank has a runoff into the drains, but I didn't know where those drainage goes. Could you just clarify that for me, please?
Yes, they go into a fuel interceptor, and fuel interceptor is monitored by the control room. But we also have pen stocks within the site drainage system, which will activate, and if there is any contamination, then it will be directed towards a storage on-site storage.
Just to follow up, so that no chance of contamination of the land or anything like that from that. That's in place to prevent that.
That's correct.
Storage tank. There's the spillage because it's self-funded, so it's got that space, and then there's also drainage as well, just in case there is anything
In the same area. So.
Thank you.
Okay, well, another councillor trying to get my attention, so I'm going to give, for the interest of time, I'm just going to go around the pretty ones. Fellow side, Councillor Haldane, do you want to raise any other questions?
No.
Okay, Councillor McCoy, Councillor Cumber, Patrick, no, Councillor Taylor, I think sure you were trying to catch my attention, weren't you?
Yeah, apologies. So I'm going to bring a couple together on behalf of one of the objectors. There were concerns around the space to load vehicles, unload fuel to the new tanks. Has that been properly considered in the design?
There's a purpose-made lay-by where fuel vehicles can park while they load and unload.
And one of my other queries earlier for the original meeting was about the location of the tank on the outside of the curve, the road comes around, and I think you responded to that with changes to the protection for the tank. Right. So that was to mitigate vehicle impacts. So that has been included in the revised, is that right? The revised plans? Sorry.
I think there haven't been revised plans, but if officers felt that was appropriate, what we've said is if the officers feel appropriate, we would accept a condition requiring some sort of protection.
Okay, I think that's all that they responded to.
Okay, right, Councillor,
In the various conversations, if I'm right and clear in understanding, the existing tank has got a 75,000 litre capacity. Correct. Right. How many times have we building here now?
I can tell you in 2021, there was 460,000 litres processed within the ERM.
450,000.
460.
Right. And you're going to do 66,000 litres of white diesel. Is that right? That's what the application says.
Yeah, that
We build 6 times a year.
well, it will take 6 deliveries a year. We will use roughly around 4,600 litres a month in the yellow plant.
That a year.
55,000.
55,000, so close. So you're going to do just under 400,000 tonnes of 400,000 litres of GE fuel, of the high burn fuel.
Yes.
Well, that's what the numbers.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. So.
Okay, Councillor Crowley.
Thank you. I've got a few questions, Jim. So would you accept you could use the same fuel?
You can't use furnace.
No, forget furnace. You've been using red diesel in both tanks. You're switching to furnace fuel. Would you accept you could use the same fuel for the vehicles and for startup? What diesel? Yeah, use red diesel and you can come.
Yes.
So why not?
It's cheaper to use furnace.
So it is a commercial decision.
That's part of it.
So have you bought into the council's environmental plan in respect of, and please don't, give me back the answer about the environment agency. Have you bought into us trying to lower emissions in this borough?
as a business, Viridor as a whole are working to lower emissions.
Well, you're going to put it for an extra application to build, to burn up to 385,000 tonnes. So that's irrelevant.
But that's not in relation to this.
No, but it is, you said. You're dancing on the head of the pin. This is excuse me, hold on, please. Had your chance.
You're confusing the issue.
No, they're not.
No, you're.
Chair, please tell.
Can
I asked. I gave you the courtesy of. No, come on. Sorry, Councillor McCoy. You've got a vested interest in the sense that you have been the one promoting Estin. Now,
make a very quick point.
Get on with your question. Go on.
Very quick point.
excuse me, Chair.
Yeah, go on.
You speak to me like that.
Please get on with your question.
I would like just to make a quick point that the time that we are burning waste, we are not burning diesel. So the more waste we burn, the less diesel we will use.
Okay, how many shutdowns did you have last year?
So how is your plant?
I'll ask you a question. How many shutdowns did you have last year when you had to refire up the incinerator? Because that's what it's used for, isn't it? Restarting the incinerator. So how many did you have last year?
Well, it's different, the amount of sort of how we're seeing it, whether it's we are shutting down for annual maintenance or whether we have an issue with the plant. There are times.
How many times did you shut down for issues with the plant?
I don't know the exact figure off the top of my head.
Manager, I would have thought you would have known.
But it's not because there are times where we have.
Sorry, what's the matter, Councillor Tang?
But there are issues. There are times where we have had issues with the plant, and we've had to come off waste. And there are numerous reasons for that, but I don't have the exact number.
Okay, thanks. Can I ask then, what is, and I know you've referred the lady here, I'm sorry, I forgot that, I do apologise. The lady here has referred to the fact that it is a somewhat bit of irrelevance between furnace flame and normal white diesel because it's within the Environment Agency's permit limit. But what is the scientific difference between furnace flame and white diesel? Because we've been told by Councillor Matty it is 100 times more sulphur. Is that correct or is that not true?
I think the important point is that the plant itself is monitored by the permit issued by the environment.
That's not what I asked, Madam.
We have to make sure that those are the levels that we are complying with.
Because you answered my question.
As I've said before, the existing fuel, the proposed two fuels are both within those limits.
No, I asked you a question. You are the expert on this. Can I ask you what the difference is between what you are currently burning and what the furnace flame is in terms of sulphur content? If you can answer that, it does concern me slightly.
I think what I can answer is what the environment.
No, please. Does that mean you don't know? It is relevant.
I think for the purposes of this meeting,
you don't tell me what the purpose of this meeting.
I'm concerned that the bullying attitude that you're taking.
I'm asking a question and I'm trying to obfuscate.
Okay, I would like to get up. Have you got any other questions you'd like to ask? And I'd like to. Come on.
See the answer, Chair.
Come
on, let's see the answer. Do any of this or no? The difference, 7 other things. Nick, can I just ask what the difference is between white diesel and furnace flame in terms of sulphur content? That is what we're worried about at the end of the day here, Chair. And I just asked you what it is.
The specific figures I don't have to have, so I won't be able to answer directly.
So are you telling me? So please, I just.
Either way, they'll need to put in this new tank if they want.
There was an issue to do with the amount of sulphur.
But it's,
Yes,
but
but
it's
they'll
not
need this
material
to-
to planning consideration.
Because the amenity of the.
if people are very qualified to answer this question, then
Okay, I'll ask a simpler.
So, right,
I'll ask you a simpler question.
Can we move on, please?
Can I ask?
I want to get to the.
No, Chair, I'll ask if
I want us to have a debate on this matter.
David,
Your last question, Councillor Crowley.
then Councillor Chip said, and asked a perfectly reasonable question, which I think people on the other side also thought was a reasonable question, in relation to why, considering you're generating your own energy there, are you not using electric vehicles offsite?
Currently, Yellow Plant that is electrified wouldn't be able to sustain the operation as we run. We are looking at this, going to an EV fleet right across the business, but we are a number of years away from actually getting to that. We will and are looking at that already without fleet.
Thank you very much. I think that does not actually relate to this particular question about the tank. Now, Councillor Shields, do you have any questions?
Mine's a simple one.
Okay, good.
On the face of its simple application has taken 48 weeks. That's as good as a year. Have the council in its planning department given you any reason that why a relatively simple planning application has taken a year, or has any bearing been put to you on the sensitivity of this issue regarding the local elections?
I think that's being a fan of myself and understanding a number of local authorities across the country. I think Sutton, like many others, has resourcing issues with planning officers. Hence why there's been such a significant delay in the determination of what is a very simple planning application.
A year to decide the provision of a tank, which we are told is no problem whatsoever. That is outrageous. Why were you asked to be in this process?
Can I invite Grace to answer your bit about the
Nationally, because of COVID, one of the issues being COVID, nationally, there has been a major increase in applications, and many boroughs, including Sutton ourselves, have been undergoing an immense amount of pressure in dealing with a huge backlog of applications. Hence why that is the main reason why this application is taking this long.
Is that the reason why then it's only taken 17 weeks to produce a housing estate?
the timing of it not relate to the
Is
decision
that the reason?
that we're going to take now? Okay, can I thank you from Viridor? Thank you very much indeed.
I need to ask questions.
Okay, Councillor Allen, could you be quick, because I think we really do need to try and.
The answer is yes, I will.
Yeah, right. Good.
When this application was first approved in 2013, you were going to burn 280,000 tonnes of rubbish. Now tonight returns it's 380,000. What is the actual capacity of this plant? What can it burn? And is it a case the more you shove into those furnaces, the more furnace fuel you've got to use to keep it burning?
No.
What is the answer?
What in terms of what the maximum capacity? The maximum capacity, its current configuration would be around 380,000.
So you're pushing it to its maximum. So on the basis that you're stuffing it in there to get the maximum amount in, you're going to have to use more of this furnace fuel to keep it burning.
It's not a case of stuffing fuel in. It's a case of optimising the operation. I've got decades of experience in this type of industry, decades of engineering experience, and through that and through an experienced team like Backland Managing, we are optimising the process in line with our environmental permit and also with support of the original OEM manufacturer.
Why did you apply for 380,000 in the first place?
Wouldn't have got through. Yeah, good question. I wasn't there at the time.
Right, so thank you very much indeed. Would you like to resume your place in the public area? Well, we now return to debate this. I'd just like to remind the committee, we've had a very wide ranging discussion, which is some very interesting points have been made. Can I just bring us back down though to what we've actually got to decide? Now, I would like to say this: the operation of this facility is regulated by highly specific environmental legislation. In the past, I would have been able to say to you that this is to fulfil to implement certain European Union directives on the environmental protection. I can't say that anymore, but it is regulated by highly specific environmental legislation. We know they're required to obtain an operating license, and their performance against the requirement of the license is monitored and regulated under said arrangement by the Environment Agency as the regulator. Now, this covers the operation of the site, so technology, fuel, quantities processed, which has been talked about quite a lot tonight. What is processed? Allowed emissions are dealt with under this regime of licensing and permission. I think it's referred to as a permit, some of these papers. Now, To be clear, we're asked to look at the planning application for a tank and the slab to bear the tank. And it comes to us with a recommendation from officers to agree it. If we reject it, it has to be for stated that are planning reasons, and that will be robust, because the applicant will have a right of appeal to the planning inspectorate. So any reasons we give will be looked at with forensic zeal by the planning inspectorate and by the applicant in their in what they say to the planning agency. A reason that can be said to be a concern about something that is in law controlled by these statutory provisions will not stand up as pass muster as a planning reason. On appeal, it would be sufficient for the applicant to say that this is covered by their license to operate from the Environment Agency, and that they comply fully with their license conditions. So I think much of what we've talked about tonight cannot provide reason for rejecting it. I looked at what we can say would provide reason for rejecting it. In fact, there's quite a useful summary in the original paper between paragraphs 2.2 and paragraphs 2.4 of what the officers looked at as they considered to be in principle the issues that need to be considered. An adverse impact on the openness of metropolitan open land, visual amenity, design, harm to the amenity of neighbouring occupiers, parking provision, highway and pedestrian safety, and adverse impact on significant trees within or adjoining the site. Quite a lot of those issues on which we haven't received any information tonight. But the choice before us is to agree this as recommended by the officers, or if it's going to be turned down, there has to be some defensible planning reason. And that's the parameters for the any discussion we're going to have. Councillor Taylor, did you was indicating that you wanted to start the discussion?
Well, so as I understand it, the grounds for refusals you've stated are very clear, and as far as I can see, none of the conditions, none of the realities, none of the facts of the application correlate to any of the reasons that we can refuse permission. I am personally concerned and have questions and issues over the change of fuel type from diesel to a more polluting furnace fuel. Thank Councillor Matty for raising that up. It's a very good point. However, I am very aware that that is not grounds for refusal, and it would be overturned on appeal. I think there's very good points raised by Councillor Chill about electric vehicle fleets. And I think that absolutely should be encouraged to be made into some sort of condition of future relationship with Viridor and with continuing the ERF. I think that's something that absolutely should be part of considerations. But again, there are no grounds on which we can refuse this under the that would not be overturned on appeal. So for me, I may want to make I don't think it's appropriate to refuse it, and I'd be minded to vote in favour.
Okay, Councillor McCoy.
Thank you. Yes, I can't see any demonstration of any material harm on the designated area of MOL on what's been proposed. There's a couple of things though that I did want to flag. Is there will be some additional vehicle movement related to this, and there will be a loss of a bit of green space. Although, as officers have said, it's not making any contribution to biodiversity. But I would like a condition to be attached, or suggest a condition is attached to confirm that the restrictions on vehicle movements to use Coombe Way on the original planning application is also applied to these additional vehicle movements, just to make absolutely sure. I would hope that that original condition would cover the new vehicle movements, but I think that's absolutely right, just for the bearing in mind the impacts on the local residential area. And then although, I mean, I think bearing in mind some of the concerns about, you know, additional, maybe the furnace fuel is perhaps not of a standard that there could have been a different fuel that might have been a better standard in terms of impact. I think, although we can't talk about that because that's sort of by the Environment Agency or controlled by the Environment Agency, we could perhaps ask for some mitigation on the loss of the bit of green space. I think if Viridor are trying to sort of mitigate their impacts, I think that would be a nice gesture, just to, you know, a bit of additional planting or something to make up for the loss of that bit of land. You want to improve, I think that's not an unreasonable condition.
Okay, well, I think you've got two good there. Now, can I just say, I'm conscious of the fact that we've got two other items on our agenda. I promised Linda Lodge that we would deal with them by 9 o'clock, and clearly not to be back now. But I mean, to try and move the thing through, we've got a suggestion that we should agree the proposal of the officers, and the councillor McCoy has just some additional conditions. So let me go around and see if there's other people, particularly anyone who wants to oppose it. If so, what would you propose as the reasons for opposition? So, Councillor Allen, do you want to begin?
Yeah, I certainly agreeing to this. I feel this is an application which is being made purely on financial reasons. Viridor simply want to save themselves £400,000 a year by burning a cheaper, more polluting fuel. So therefore, I oppose it.
Councillor Shields.
I'm together with this councillor. Basically, we are dancing on the head of the pin, as Councillor Crowley says. This application, if it is allowed, facilitates the burning of 1 million litres of dirtier fuel by allowing a second tank to hold cleaner fuel, freeing up capacity of dirty fuel. This will bring detriment to the air quality, both locally and further afield. It is a responsible and listening council, and it's our duty to refuse this application on the increase of pollution that this application will bring. It's a little bit like I handed someone the knife, but my mate used it. It's not good enough. It's time this council stood up for the values and cared for local residents. No, the grounds are the perception of the public, making sure a planning authority is not blind to the senses.
I share.
Not get elected.
Okay, that's
residents.
okay. Councillor Crowley.
Well, I'd say I was very surprised in our questioning of Viridor that they couldn't or wouldn't, and I don't know which one it was, tell me the difference in the amount of sulphur difference between furnace flame and white diesel. Now, I would have thought that they would tell me that, but it was coming across to me from Viridor that they didn't want to say anything on that because they know it would effectively expose their whole argument. Now, we are meant to be council that, according to the chair of ENST, is going to go carbon neutral by 2030. Yet we are going to facilitate, whether we like it or not, the burning of furnace flame, almost 1 million litres a year, which has got a much higher sulphur content. Yet it has. Well, that's what they said they're going to burn on. Plus, and you know, Councillor McCoy has just said that I tend to agree with her that a condition should be put in on vehicle movements, but we've already allowed the additional vehicle movements because we didn't object to the increase between 287,000 tonnes and 345,000 tonnes by the South London Waste Partnership, which in itself created additional vehicle movements. So I'll be against this on the basis, and I'll come up with something on the amenity side of things to not only the site, which you might say is small. Councillor McCoy quite rightly said she'd like a condition put in for, you know, some of the green put back in somewhere else. And also what it will do in perception and reality to emissions from the ERF. And I was also not particularly, Councillor Whitehead used to, ex-Councillor Whitehead, well, I mean, not late, but ex used to obviously sit on these meetings. And one of her big things that she pushed through all the time and give credit to Councillor Whitehead, was electric vehicles all the time. Electric. She was going on about Bennington Lane having, going to the government and getting electric delivery vehicles and having a main hub there. Yet we've got Viridor, one of the largest companies in the UK, that has got its own electrical manufacturing plant there, that won't put electrical vehicles in there. No, they said they can't, but I don't believe that, I'm afraid. I just don't believe it. They could if they wanted to, but they decided they don't want to. This is all about commercial, financial, and not about the residents. And I'm afraid because of that, I would suggest that we put something in there about there will be loss of amenity, both on metropolitan open land, and let's face it, we've all argued that over things like schools, etc. Plus, there would be a loss of amenity to people in the area. And I'd like to put that forward as well as a reason for us not supporting this, because I think we have to send a strong message environmentally. And if the inspector turns it down, so be it. But I would have imagined you on that side of the table would actually prefer that in some respects, because you're going to get the brickbats for this if you vote for it.
Right.
Two elements. Firstly, there was mention earlier about what was London Borough of Sutton's reaction to the increase in volume. And I have a copy of the submission by Spencer Palmer, Strategic Director of Environment, Housing and Neighbourhoods, to the Environment Agency. And he says, though, through the original planning application, the ERF sized at the maximum capacity of 302,500 tonnes per annum, while the 2020 increase was based on achieving a maximum availability rate for the facility achieved through fewer shutdowns for maintenance. It is not clear how this further increase in tonnage will be handled at the site without, and this is important, adversely affecting the site operation or the local area. As set out in the South London Waste Plan, there is no need for any additional capacity to process waste within Sutton. The existing ERF facility and current permit limits already meet the waste needs of Sutton and the other South London Waste Partnership boroughs. So I find it slightly perverse that we have here a recommendation submitted in the name of Spencer Palmer, yet he is saying we don't need the extra capacity. So there's a contradiction in terms there, but more importantly, within the context of another freedom of information request, there was correspondence between already mentioned David Warburton and Viridor in 2017. And I'll quote from that: "The success of those habitats in fulfilling the planning conditions attached to the ERF and previous applications has a large financial and reputational impact both to Viridor and the council." Now that to me says that officers consider the council and Viridor's financial and reputational position in making decisions and recommendations. That also I find very, very disturbing. So in terms of recommendations for this, I just have a doubt that somewhere down the line, that when you're dealing with a business partner, when there are financial and reputational elements to consider, that we here are making a wrong decision if we support this, as well as saying, why are we, the London Borough of Sutton Planning Department, even considering granting planning permission to something where we know we've already got the capacity, and all we're doing is saying, let's bring in more waste from other areas and burn it in our area. I'm very much against that. Whatever materials you use, whatever, whether it's white diesel, red diesel, furnace fuel, is bringing rubbish into our area to burn. And as a councillor in Beddington, but more importantly for the entirety of Sutton, that rubbish has got to get here down our roads. It doesn't come in electric vehicles, it comes in dirty, smoky, dirt-driven vehicles. And I'm sorry, I am totally against this proposal.
Okay. Thank you very much. Isn't involved in increasing capacity and before we go any further, can we just get out restrictions on vehicles using Kuma Lane Is that something we can,
Is that a condition which wants the applicant to provide details of their delivery routes and also limit the number of trips that they've already stated? That's a acceptable as well.
right, okay, then that's not acceptable to you. Okay, Councillor McCoy, your question about a condition relating to the use of metropolitan open land. I saw you nodding your heads, but is there some way in which we can crystallise that or within the condition?
Potential landscaping, detailed on landscaping.
Details of landscaping plans, would you be happy with that then?
The
Okay,
cost of that.
right, well, let's do that. Okay, well, look, we can
We
discuss
reference
it.
biodiversity on that.
Sorry?
Can we reference biodiversity to help improve biodiversity size?
Yeah, I'll try, yeah.
Okay, well, you can sort out those conditions. To try and bring this to a conclusion then, I'll go around first of all to see whether we can, we'll put the proposition that we agree the recommendation of the officers. If we don't agree that, then we'll have to try and tease out, which will take us to forever, what these reasons for objection are. But that increase in pollution, impact on the immunity, impact on the emissions. Failure to use electric vehicles, I think would be quite difficult as a some we go to the go in as a reason, and all of these other issues are would be subject to an answer to the inspectorate that they're covered by the license conditions. So shall we take a vote on agreeing the officer's recommendation?
Thank you, Chair. So it's the officer's recommendation, just with the two conditions that we just discussed about provide details of their delivery routes and a limit on the number of trips, and in relation to the loss of metropolitan open land, to provide a landscaping plan to help improve biodiversity. Councillor Eric Allen.
Sorry, on the conditions, did we not agree that this is we need more details on the increased pollution coming out of this reduction in air quality as the cause and effect of granting this application? Sure, that's what we've been talking about.
All of those are issues covered by the license obtained from the Environment Agency. Let's go ahead with it. Let's just take a view on that. Because about Councillor Allen.
Councillor Eric Allen.
Against?
Councillor Tim Crowley.
Against. Against.
Councillor Sam Comer.
Or
Councillor Tim Foster.
Against.
Councillor Amy Harding. Councillor Patrick.
I just want to say, I've heard everything they however, my only reason for saying for is just because of the appeal. I don't think there's enough grounds for us to reject it somewhere.
I think that's what we all want to do.
Thank you very much. That's very well put.
Sit down.
Councillor Tony Shue.
Against.
Councillor Luke Taylor. I just want to take opportunity to echo Patrick's point, and I would have liked a little bit more debate and discussion on this. I think that the reality is, I'm very disappointed that we were not able to have more of a say on the emissions implications of this. And I know that the fact is that if we refuse, it will be appealed and it will be granted. I don't think it's appropriate.
Courage of your conviction. Don't be spineless. Don't be spineless.
Can you
And not like behind the inspector.
can you please indicate your view, Councillor Taylor?
On the appropriateness of the comments from the public gallery from Councillor Matty, please.
Sorry, Councillor, we are at a particular point in this. Can you indicate, are you?
I'm in favour, yes.
Yeah.
You're right, thank you much. Okay.
Thank you. Councillor Jane.
Well, there's no planning grounds on which to refuse it.
Environmental policy shot.
Chair, that's 6 votes for and 4 against.
Right, thank you very much indeed. That's still that. Thank you.
You could clarify then 6 them votes.
Yeah.
Who's she?
30
Who's
the
them
32 Beddington Lane. Do councillors want a 1 minute comfort break, or can we do one? I am conscious of the fact that we promised that Linda Lodge would be at 9 o'clock, and we're way out of that now. Sorry?
Beddington Lane won't take long.
I'm not getting a very clear view from council. Do you want a 2 minute comfort break? Or do you want to go on? Beddington Lane.
We are in need of the comfort break. Councillor Allen has.
He's left it. Bill just.
Right.
Go with the nice thing.
A few late amendments as detailed in the second addendum, to ensure that living in affordable housing is being secured as part of the unilateral undertaking, and to ensure suitable provision of electric vehicle charging points provided on site. The applicant has accepted a condition to secure the electric vehicle charging points at 2 of the proposed on-site car parking spaces. And lastly, the wording to condition 6 has been changed so that the details relating to the renewable energy measures will be submitted and approved at a later stage. So the application seeks planning permission for the redevelopment of the vacant former industrial site, previously a B8 use, to provide 9 new dwellings in the form of a farmhouse terrace fronting Beddington Lane and a detached 2-storey building in the northeast corner of the site, to provide 4 flats, including associated works to provide private gardens, shared amenity space, car parking, hard and soft landscaping, and site and rectory fields. The applicant has been referred to committee because the application received 1 letter of objection, and the council has interest in the land. So some images. The top left image is the view from opposite the site on Beddington Lane, looking southeast. And top right, this is the view from Beddington Lane, looking northeast. The bottom right hand corner of this photograph shows existing vehicle access into the site, which is to be retained. And the CGI at the bottom. The top image is the view from inside the site, northwest corner of the site. The site is largely an area of open hard standing, but for the white 2-storey building in the opposite corner. And the bottom image is looking back towards the northwest corner. Opposite site on Beddington Lane, 2-storey buildings, mainly residential use. So the applications for the redevelopment of the vacant former industrial site provide 100% affordable housing and social rent. These are new homes, council built, for tenants on the council's housing waiting list. The applicant is the London Borough of Sutton's housing enabling development team. To ensure that development is inherently low in energy use, passive design measures have been utilised. So the proposed terrace front of Beddington Lane would, in terms of scale and mass, be in keeping with surrounding properties in the area. There's the key at the top here, details of materials, mainly facing brickwork and aluminium windows. These are in keeping with the area. Black block to the northeast corner would also relate to the wider building heights. The building would be finished with matching design details to the adjacent terrace and setback and unobtrusive in the street scene. And in summary, it's considered that the proposed development is acceptable in design terms and will preserve and enhance the character and appearance of this part of the Beddington Village Conservation Area. A significant gap of approximately 25 metres will be maintained to the nearest dwellings on Richmond Road. And as such, it's considered that outlook on light would not be adversely affected at any adjoining properties. There will be a degree of mutual overlooking from first floor south facing windows of the flatted block. So in mitigation, the first floor south facing windows of Unit 8 would serve non-habitable rooms, being a hallway and bathroom, and would be obscure glazing so as to prevent overlooking. The balustrade to the balcony of Unit 6 would fit with obscure glazing with screening along the eastern side at a height of 1.8 metres. And as such, it's considered there be no loss of privacy to adjoining properties. Proposed buildings would all comply with the relevant gross internal area threshold for price of the London plan. So the proposed terrace of properties would provide between 37 to 60 square metres of private outdoor amenity space. This is slightly below the 70 square metres threshold as advised in Council SVD 14. The layout and size of gardens is not outkeeping with other single family dwellings within the area, and the 11 amenities adequate. Ground floor flats in the northeast corner of the site each have 46 and 84 square metres of private living space, which exceeds the guidance in the London plan. In addition, the first floor flats would have access to balconies measuring 7 square metres, which is typical for this type of block. And its specific proposal would not result in harm to the amenities of future occupants. Proposal would include utilising the existing access and footway crossover, access 9 car parking spaces on site. The level of proposed on-site parking is in line with adopted standards. The Council's highway officers raised no objections, subject to a construction logistic plan, and the area traffic engineer has raised no objections. And for these reasons, it's considered that the proposal be acceptable in respect to car parking provision and its highways impacts. Historic England have raised no objections, subject to conditions to ensure no harm is caused to archaeological remains. The Council's sustainability officers raised no objections to the energy statement and the substance strategy. The Council's tree officers raised no objection, and further landscaping details have been secured by condition. And the Council's biodiversity officers raised no objection, subject to conditions. The unilateral undertaking is required to ensure that the scheme delivers 100% affordable housing socially, and any agreed biodiversity net gain value is protected in perpetuity, and that the biodiversity tariff is imposed should both values not be achieved. Fire safety information has been submitted to corporate London plan website. So in summary, the vacant former industrial use is no longer required, and traditional housing would be suitable in this location. The proposal would provide high quality affordable housing. The proposal would improve the appearance of the site and preserve and enhance the character and appearance of the dedicated conservation area. And the proposal would not affect neighbouring amenity and would provide a satisfactory standard of accommodation for each occupiers. The proposal would not adversely impact on highways, trees, and biodiversity, and would be a sustainable form development. It is therefore recommended for approval.
Thank you very much. I did actually visit this site today. I must say, I was surprised at the size of the site for 19 accommodation in parking. I'm sure I full structure of private developer, but we were cramming at least twice to that number of units of accommodation. Any questions to the officer, Councillor Taylor?
Mine's just a technical one. We're only providing 2 electric car charging points for 9 parking spaces. We're 8 years away from internal combustion engines being phased out. I know it's not part of our standards yet, but we should be providing charging positions for all the car spaces. I'm sure Eric Allen will back me up on that. Is there any addition? I mean, the additional cost of that is probably £7,000, and this is, a big project. I don't think that that's a major consideration. Is that something that we would like to insist upon?
I think at the moment
Being on that, good tailoring, but I think we should have.
Can we please let Grace respond to this first, please?
I think at the moment there is a requirement which has been met on site, but we could ask the applicant to put future provision in place.
Yeah.
And if the applicant is willing to accept that, we can add that as a condition.
Right, well, we're going to hear from the applicant in just a moment, so let's store that till then. Councillor Foster.
What is the distance between the front of the properties and Beddington Lane? The front of the terrace, so in other words, the separation between.
We don't have that calculation to hand. The applicant is the.
Perhaps we can
I asked the question because for 4.5 years now, there has been talk of an HGV ban because of the pollution and the volume of traffic going through there. If there is no HGV ban, we're actually putting social housing very, very close to HGVs that will dwarf that terrace. Because that's what's happening at the moment. You've got HGVs going down there that dwarf the existing properties. I'm not against the idea of developing this site, but the location of those, I have a problem with that. The other issue is safety. If you, in the reports that were in the with the planning application, there was a note of road traffic accidents. Can you tell me where those road traffic accidents tended to happen?
I'll just answer your first points and I'll direct the other points to the Barry officer. In terms of the buffer distance of the front elevations of those new units to the pavement would be approximately 5 metres. The applicant may wish to clarify that, but that's what we believe it to be. And also that we would consider that a considerable buffer distance. And also on design and layout, that line of the new line of properties would match the existing line of properties for the rest of Bennington Lane. That's right. It's there's an established building line, so that's the reason why.
My question about road traffic accidents, where do they principally happen in that area? According to your own report, in the application.
You know the answer to that question.
Well, the question, I know the answer to the question because it's in the report.
Okay.
They all happen at pedestrian crossings. Derry Road, that crossing right just to the close to that entrance and to the beginning of Hideous Lane. We have a pedestrian crossing between that exit and Richmond Road. And I'm very concerned about that having 2 exits, 2 entrances with in the middle a pedestrian crossing. Why is there no way of actually getting the vehicles in either through Richmond Road or in a different way?
Yeah, we've looked carefully at the entrance. It does meet our highway safety standards. It's slightly on the outside of the bend in Bennington Lane, and sight lines are good. There's adequate separation from both the nearby side road and also the pedestrian crossing. So we're quite happy with the sight lines and the road safety. As with most main roads, there will be 1 or 2 accidents up and down the road. That's a fairly common occurrence. There's nothing to suggest that there is a hotspot that particularly needs to be dealt with. It's more of a random.
The hotspots in the report, Nick, are at pedestrian crossings. You don't have any accidents anywhere else. They're all at the pedestrian crossings. The most recent one wiped out 4 or 5 bollards and lampposts at that pedestrian crossing right next to that entrance the other day. So, and hospitalised the driver. So there is danger here, and I have a concern about the safety. I'm not against the development. I'm just saying I don't think it's being well considered, especially in the light of the fact that we've got an HGV. The HGV ban has not happened, and you've got an uncontrolled or unmonitored 20-mile-an-hour zone that people are ignoring.
Okay.
Well, I can comment further on that. As I say, we've looked at the accident trends in terms of recorded accidents, and that's the only thing that the local authority can go on. While there have been 1 or 2 accidents at locations which you've identified, there's no sort of overall trend. In terms of heavy goods vehicles, you are correct in that negotiations are still going on with Croydon Council.
Yes.
And it is ongoing, but the council's fighting to obviously to get that HGV ban in. There is obviously an implication on Croydon Council. The discussion with them is ongoing because their borough is impacted, but obviously we're determined to drive that ban through. In terms of also just going back to the point that you made on the separation, the frontages of the properties, we were aware that the existing footway is actually quite narrow to the front of the units, and land has been dedicated by the developer to widen the footway to beyond our normal adopted standards. So it doesn't exceed what is required for pedestrian safety on that corner.
Okay, thank you. Can we get Councillor McCoy?
Thank you. I think the discussion's been around the sort of parking at the front of the buildings. I'm questioning the access road at the side, unless I think the access road, there's not much been said about that. It's directing some vehicle movements alongside the neighbouring property, which they've not, don't think they've really had before. There haven't been any objections, I noticed, but there's a fair bit of traffic to the back and there. But also it's along with the parking at the front, it means vehicles crossing pedestrian footway as an access road does. And I know that there's a school nearby, and I just wondered if there'd been any consideration about the impacts, the safety impacts of that having an access way there, in light of the quite narrow pavements and children having to get to and from school, and also the sound, the noise of impacts.
Yeah, it's something that we've looked at. We're aware of the schools in the area, looked at the pedestrian crossing. I'm particularly spoken in detail to the area traffic engineer who's been involved in looking at the HGV ban and all the other measures along Beddington Lane, including the pedestrian and cycle facilities. So he's aware of everything that's being put forward in Beddington Lane. He's happy with the proposals as well. It's nothing out of kilter in terms of what you would expect from access to this type of development in this area. As I say, it's slightly on the outside of the bend of Beddington Lane, so the sight lines are good up and down the road. As I say, we're happy that it meets highway standards.
Should we,
Sorry, can I go on? And sight lines are okay there as well. Sorry, that's something I meant to mention. Okay. And okay, yeah, I'll leave it there. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Andrew, but be quick.
Very quick. I'm pleased with the putting in this is a future proof for the installation of 2 EV charging bays. Would make more sense, I would think, if we were actually to supply an electrical cable to each of those parking bays. It wouldn't cost a great deal because it could simply just be a 3 kilowatts cable. I am aware that, as Councillor Taylor has said, I do have an electrical vehicle. Trying to charge it is probably one of the hardest things you can do if you're living in a flat. And perhaps you will take note of it. There are over 300 flats where I live in Sutton, and there is only one charging point. It is outside the chemist's on a red route, and you can only park there for 1 hour. So it's impossible to get a charge in your vehicle without having to drive to Sainsbury's. And Sainsbury's have a number of parking electrical points, none of which work.
There is Robin Hood Lane, opposite the pub.
Well, it's still a long way away.
Can I suggest we'll put these to the applicant. So should we hear from the applicant now? I've got down here Wynne Willie and Adam Whiteley. Is that they? Yeah, you'd like to come to table, please. And just to say, I mean the applicant is the council. This is a sense council having revision. And perhaps you could just tell us your names.
Sorry.
Can you just tell us your names? Thank you.
Sorry, thank you.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, I'm the same as you, Chair. I've got hearing. Issues.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah.
My name is Neil Pryor. I'm the client. I work in the housing enabling development team.
I'm Wynne Gilly from Architecture PLB, the architects and the agent for the application.
Adam Whiteley, project manager for the council for this project.
Do you wish to say anything to the committee about the discussion so far?
I've got just a quick paragraph.
Yes, good.
Chair. The project at Beddington Lane will be the first passive house social housing scheme that the council will deliver. Passive house is a leading sustainable design method for constructing buildings that are comfortable throughout the seasons, as well as very low energy. As well as meeting the passive house standard, there will be additional measures to make the dwellings reach zero net carbon, including photovoltaic panels, which will also contribute significantly to reducing the tenants' fuel bills. This will assist in the council's aims to help tackle fuel poverty. The scheme will deliver 9 new housing units for tenants at social rent levels. The mix of unit sizes targeted at waiting tenant needs. One of the properties will also be a disabled person's unit. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any questions then to the applicant, Councillor Foster?
How much will it be charging the tenants for the electric vehicle charging points like you are at Leadenbury?
the electric charging points currently at Richmond Green, I believe are charged at, I think that is. I've got the photovoltaics in my head, but unfortunately I don't have the.
But you charge them the presence of the electrical thing and the charging.
Right, so and on all of our sites so far, until such point that the electric charging vehicles are used sufficiently to cover their own costs, the electric vehicle charge points are currently charged to the site, yes.
To the site, to the tenants.
To
So
the tenants.
on, for example, Richmond Green, you've got no electrical vehicles, but all the tenants are paying for the presence of an electric charging point. But nobody apart from tenants can use the electric charging point.
That's correct.
Okay.
Just application of electric vehicles.
Do you want to raise this question about the?
In response to Councillor Taylor and Councillor Allen's request, is there a possibility that you would be willing to accept a condition to install electric car vehicle infrastructure for the remaining 7 spaces?
Questions on the, we need the substation. We don't. So we do it. So yes, the answer is yes, we could take that to the plan.
Right.
Sorry, I needed to check.
So Councillor Foster's point, the very core
Retain rates.
places that they're not actually going to get used.
Well,
I don't know that that's.
Put in infrastructure,
What we do is put in infrastructure.
so you just plug it in when they're.
Yeah, you just put the cable in through the ducts so that as and when additional charging points were needed, we could then add quite easily add the additional charging.
Okay, but so Richmond Green development is social housing.
Yeah.
And there is electric vehicle infrastructure charging infrastructure there, which is great. It's not being used at all, meaning we can see that people that live in this borough who live in social housing cannot afford electric vehicles at the moment for whatever reason. And yet we're going to put in a condition that's not even in the planning application to say that they have to pay for even more of them.
No,
even though we know that.
It'll just be the infrastructure's there so that when they need them, they can put the box on and then connect. Yeah. So there'd be no charge.
So the infrastructure is there, which would be part of the development cost that we would produce to produce the dwellings.
So this is separate to what Councillor Foster was just saying.
Yeah.
So what it is in the what Councillor Foster was saying is that where you have a current charging point, there is a charge that gets charged to the tenant. What we're talking about here is having a charging point on the site, and every other car parking space has the infrastructure in place to add a charging point to it at a later date.
Right, okay.
It's just you.
Right, anything else? Councillor Foster.
Yeah, this is really a bit of disappointment because I know the local area. You've had Waterman, do the reports on here, whether and it does worry me when you get a report like this, when they still have the Beddington Medical Centre, which doesn't exist and didn't exist back in the Richmond Green application days, and is still in here. There isn't a Beddington Medical Centre. Why are we still allowing desktop research to support applications?
Did you check out the Beddington Centre? So you answer that.
Yes, I'm sorry, Councillor Foster, I did check, because this was mentioned recently, this point. I was not able to find on my rereading of the documents this reference, but we stand to be corrected. I don't know whether the way in which it's been referred to is material, the application, I don't know.
Well, if I find Beddington Medical Centre in there, and you're saying it's not material, why?
No,
which bits are material? That's my point.
No,
If you
sorry,
don't produce a report,
misquoting me.
produce it properly. That's what I'm saying.
I'm completely lost now. How is a medical centre relevant to this application?
Because my point, Chair, is that if you're going to have a report that supports an application in planning, that detail should be right.
And when it is actually talking about roads, it's talking about parking, it's talking about accidents, and it points out that there is an ASDA, there is a medical centre. I know there's an ASDA, but it says there's Bennington Medical Centre. Now, that's exactly the same type of report that came in supporting the Richmond Green application. And it's wrong because Beddington Medical Centre has not existed in at least 10 years. And it's disappointing that you get a report. And if I'm to read a report and use it to influence my decision, it needs to be right. I'd like detail to be right.
Okay, that's
material.
Are there any other questions to the applicant?
Where are you going to go, doctors?
Okay, well, thank you very much indeed, for you can resume your place in the public gallery now. Can I put it to the committee? Do we need to debate this, or can we move directly to a vote on it? Okay, Councillor Foster.
I don't know that it needs a debate. I'd just like to say that I spoke with the housing people. We had meetings prior to this, and I did ask and I requested that the application be delayed until such time we knew for certain about the HGV ban. And unfortunately, elements about the access and that type of thing, no notice has been taken of local knowledge, which is very disappointing. Councillor McCoy mentioned schools, that if you go across the pedestrian crossing that is within 10 metres of that entrance, there is the village hall. And in that village hall, every day there's a nursery. So when we talk, and I know whether sight lines are good or not, because I cross that road every morning to go to the paper shop that's just round the corner. I know that, and certainly my colleagues who are sometimes on the phone when I cross that crossing, that the cars are coming through there and the lorries are coming through there too fast. And I have been known to remonstrate with them as they nearly knocked me or my dog over. So it is a dangerous place, and not enough consideration, I'm sorry, has been given. And I'm disappointed. I'm supportive of the idea of social housing at that place and its redevelopment. And certainly I know that residents are happy with the idea of it being developed because it's become a place for vandalism and antisocial behaviour. But that doesn't make the design right, and I don't think enough consideration has been given to that. So I will be certainly abstaining from any vote, but I wanted to make that clear.
Okay, well, thank you very much. I think those are all very good points that you make. As you know, I'm a very sort of task-focused chair, and I say, well, I don't think they're all very good points. They're not reason for turning it down. So can we get let's move to vote on the.
Thanks, Chair. Just so please, it's the vote on the officer's recommendations, but considering the condition that was discussed about the installation of electric vehicle charging points infrastructure to parking spaces. Is that correct?
That's it.
Yeah.
Cool.
Councillor Eric Allen.
For.
Councillor Tim Bowen. 4. Councillor Sam Cumber. 4. Councillor Tim Foster.
Abstain.
Councillor Amy Hodding.
4.
Councillor Patrick O'Brien. 4. Councillor Tony Shields.
4.
Councillor Lee Taylor. 4. Councillor Jane McCauley.
4. Can I just suggest that the ward councillors can try and get some highways improvements through other schemes?
Trying.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Councillor Clifton. Chair, 9 votes for and 1 abstention.
Right. Okay. Well, let's see how far we can get with the lodge. On which we do have a number of. Can I ask if Alan and Caroline Brown are here?
One poorly at the moment.
Okay, we've got Alan Brown, we've got Councillor Garrett, I see, and you've got Joe Haynes, who's going to, right, okay, so we have got several speakers on this. Manuel, take us through the presentation.
That's
What the it's not that it shuts out on mine and all the internet. Yeah.
No.
What's the obvious problem?
Yeah. There you go. Like 3G kind of pops to E and then disappears. But you've still got 5 minutes.
Okay, we've got a slight technical problem, but I think we can still see the slides.
He's got
So
to.
we're starting. Thank you. Let's get on with it. In the lodge. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Next item is Linda Lodge. Before I go to the, as indicated in the addendum, we received additional representation and consultees report, which has resulted in securing agreement with the applicant for additional conditions to be added to any grant of information. Basically, secure the details of the participants, restrict the number of children and the living times in the external play area, pure noise management plan, and biodiversity enhancement.
Sorry. It's not in this one.
Skin design.
Oh, right.
So the application relates to Linda Lodge. So see here, large plot of land situated at the road junction between Park Road going from north to south and Newcastle Road from east to west. These are the views from the side. To your left is southern reaching the road junction between Newcastle Road here and Park Road there, looking towards the application site. To your right is the west elevation from Park Road. This is the elevation to your west. Your left is the west elevation from Worcester Road, looking towards Park Road there.
Excuse me, we haven't got Park Road. Do you mean York Road?
York Road, sorry. York Road.
Possible to
That's a problem with the internet. Unfortunately, it's a problem with the internet. Yeah. Sorry, York Road here. So yeah, to your right is front garden of number 12 York Road, looking towards the application site. So these are more views, front elevation and side elevation of the application site to your left. There's a small building there. It's a unit on its own, 93A Mr. Road, and the side elevation of 93 to your right. Now the next photo is the front elevation of the application site. So this application has been referred to the council committee because we received more than 10 letters of objection to the contract officer's recommendation. The application seeks planning permission to change the existing use of the property from a 24-room care home to a nursery class EF, which hold up to 103 children and 25 staff. It will be operating between 7 a.m. and 9 p.m. Monday to Friday. The scheme includes provision for 5 parking spaces and 18 second storage for the staff members. And it also includes approximately 50 square meter outdoor play area to be fenced by 1.8 meter high social fence to the western boundary. The proposal involves some minor alterations with the fenestration and creating of new openings. So in front elevation, you're changing the existing fenestration to clear glasses and creating more or installing new openings in the front elevation. Shown here. This is the rear elevation, again, which includes openings or outer doors leading onto the standard play area to be created in the rear garden area. Is the parking area, which is the 5 parking spaces, will be created to the front, and the 18 circuit storage will be to the side.
This area is mainly for the employees or the staff members on the site. The scheme as here is more or less car-free. So the applicant has provided detailed transport statement, which in sense complies with the maximum parking standard for proposed use, and it also indicated that there's capacity in the streets within the area to provide parking when required. The applicant has made a case for the application in the sense that it's asserted to provide information that the nursery in a neighboring area within the locality are all full to capacity. And so this is designed such that to provide beneficial use for about 1,500 households within this catchment area, which is within a 5 minutes walk from sites to the nearest properties that they are looking for. And as stated in the rear area is being converted to external play area for the children. And again, as you can see, that the applicants have provided detailed noise assessments, which implies that the proposed use will be compatible with the area and any noise could be mitigated by the addition of the acoustic fence to the side western boundary, which we have more or less secured. We're going to secure conditions, then the details comply with what is required so that it can achieve its purpose. And the application is recommended for approval for that condition for reasons set out in the report. Thank you.
Okay, questions to the officer? Yeah.
Okay, thank you. So I'll start with this first first question. My first question is, you've got 103 places, is that correct? 103 places, okay. So what's the current staff ratio for the nursery? What's the staff?
I think that's a question that should be targeted towards the applicant who's here today.
Okay,
it's quite specific beyond our.
Okay, come up with some questions.
Do you answer sort of related, the number of care home residents and staff, the ratio of its current use?
It's empty. It's empty. You've got 24 residents.
Zero.
I don't know, it's not. It's 0. I know it's ratio.
Quick maths.
Right, McCoy, you wanted to raise.
Thank you. It's currently a class 2 use as a former care home, and my understanding is that the recent regulations regarding use classes is that they can be, you can change between them quite easily. So, but not to, obviously it needs planning permission to go to, going from a residential use to commercial use. It could be any form of residential use within permitted development rules. If that's, we'll be past C2. C2. So what can officers, how have officers arrived at the conclusion that a commercial premises providing nursery places outweighs what we know is a pressing need for housing, residential properties and housing, when we know that sites are so short, it's short supply. So yeah, what I'm saying is would there not be a pressure to try and retain a residential unit in this area?
So can I clarify, when you mean residential, you mean like care home residential?
No, I mean general residential, because this could be changed to a residential use. Once it's gone to a commercial use, then that loses that residential.
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, we can only assess the application as how it has come to us. There has been no application to change it to residential, so we can only assess the application as being proposed.
Okay, now almost every councillor who wants to speak. So then let's start from this end and work our way around. Councillor Allen.
Thank you. Could you tell us exactly how large is the amenity area?
As I indicated, that amenity area is about 50 square meters.
50
yes.
In total?
Yes, in total.
And we have 28 children at a time in that area. So that's 2 meters per child. Well, we think less than 2 meters per child.
Well, that's.
Plus you'll have teachers and staff. If the ratio of staff is 1 to 4, then you're going to have another 7. So there's 35 people in that very small area. That's going to create a lot of noise.
We've asked that question to the applicant, and I think the applicant is best placed to answer that, but I don't think at the moment there's set amounts of external space per child, if I understand rightly.
If I turn it back onto the previous one, we were talking about the flats and the amount of community area applicable to each flat, which came within the London allowance, which I believe is about 40 or 47 square meters for a flat. Then what we've got here is upwards of 35 people in the equivalent area for a small flat.
There is no policy to commit the nursery to a certain, but all I can say.
That's the point, you know, if there isn't a policy, how can we then consider such a small area for such a large number of children and their staff?
Just to compliment the point, because so just a bit of background, I live.
No, please,
Sorry,
do you want to?
What I'm saying is, yes, I'm going to explain. We don't have any specific policy relating to environmental space for children. But having said that, this is a regulation by Ofsted, and Ofsted will look into that. The regulation, from my understanding, is the applicant or the nursery owners need to provide on site. If not, there should be provision to be had anywhere outside the application site. So it's controlled by other.
But this is for young children, preschool children. You're not going to stick them in a bus and take them somewhere else.
Sorry, so the amount of outdoor play per day is regulated by the EYFS regulations. There's a set amount of outdoor play time that children are required to have. There is also a restriction on having children outside during summer before 3 o'clock because humidity levels are too high. We're putting restriction on children being outside after 4:30. In addition to all of these conditions and constraints, we've got an area that is clear, as Eric has very, very correctly spotted. It's one of my concerns as well. I was casting with the applicant. We've got combination factors here that just appear to suggest this isn't a facility that's capable of complying with the regulations and providing the EYFS requirements for outside play in a reasonable manner for children that will be attending this nursery. This might be a question of the applicant, and if so, I'll kind of hold it until they're able to respond. But I don't know whether officers have a perspective on those conflicting points.
What I can say is that the applicant has put forward a case that they are an established business where they have several nurseries, I believe, across southwest London and southeast London. So we were of the assumption that because this is an established nursery business, that they are more likely to know that they are meeting those regulations more than we are in terms of planning policy. So it's probably a question that I need to ask them.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Shields.
I've got a few points. Hopefully you can get back to me as well. The officer said at the beginning, this is low car use because the applicant has provided a transport assessment. I've never laughed so much. It is hilarious. It is a work of fiction. It is absolutely ridiculous. We could spend a 3-hour meeting going through the holes in this application. Part of this application is predated upon that it's all okay because our properties in Bromley are how we've taken our measurements. How this has been accepted as a token of fact, I'm unaware. But what I did do was have a little go around to Overton Park Pavilion, Bumps of Daisies Nursery. Sat there in my car, looking suspicious. 8 o'clock one morning. 2 or 3 people came on foot, the rest were motor cars in, many leaving them running, out, child in, back again. And I can only imagine the same is done in reverse. I did the same. Are you looking suspicious at Busy Bees at Grove Road, Chitterlord? It was worse than Overton Park. The only thing is, because there's yellow lines there, the mums were a bit faster. They were a bit faster. But to come up with this travel plan that everyone will walk is ridiculous.
You've got your question.
No, but my question is, if I've said, first 2 questions. One, how on earth have we accepted this travel plan as fact without checking it? And second question is, we do have an ability to regulate the use. I take the point of Councillor McCoy's loss of residential property, which I take importantly, and there's also the over-intensification of use of the site, which spills into the comings and goings, the drop-off, pick-up, noise, deliveries, staff attendances inside and outside of the 7 till 7 o'clock operation. There's an over-intensification of use through the introduction of a commercial premises on a place designated for homes.
Okay, can I just interpolate at this point? We started on this issue, now this case, so we're going to have to complete it. It's now 5 to 10. I've got an objector, Alan Brown, who wishes to speak. Councillor Garrett sat very patiently throughout the entire evening and wishes to speak. And we need to hear from the applicant, Joe Haynes. So I'm really saying that just to say that I don't know if there are councillors here who have got some other commitment, but having started this business. Okay, do you want to
maybe Nick wants to question.
Yeah, picking up on some of the points that Councillor Shields has made regarding the surveys which are provided in the transport statement. As stated, the transport assessment is comprehensive. The surveys that they've submitted are of similar types of land uses in similar types of locations, similar PTAL areas. That's the type of analysis that is accepted by local authorities across London, is an accepted methodology of using surveys of similar types of sites. So the findings that we found in their surveys are accepted. I've also spoken to the Sustainable Transport Officer who deals with school sites across the borough. He has confirmed his acceptance that this is a type of modal split and a type of traffic generation and overall trip generation to the site that we would accept. And he has accepted what has been provided as well. So we don't have any qualms with what is placed, and that's what we would expect in terms of trip journey open to the site.
Well, in that case, if I could just respond, Chair, if that is the slapdash level of acceptance that we have for professional officers in the London Borough of Sutton, because somebody else wrote it, no one's checked it, and it's all paid. It is utterly cavalier. Thank heavens we have a committee of elected people, because this really will not do, and it has not been checked because the facts are not written on this paper. It's a dreamscape.
Yes.
Okay, so I just want to move on from Councillor Taylor's point. Basically, how far is the nearest train station or bus stop from the site?
900 metres.
Yeah, the nearest train station is some way away, but there is a local bus service which runs along Worcester Road and York Road, which passes the corner of the site.
That's bus 470, which is very, very regular. It's about one every half hour. It takes about 2 hours to get anywhere.
Yeah, exactly.
It does it regularly.
Yeah.
I'd just like to give a bit of counterpoint to Tony Shields' evidence of transport planning and car use. So I live on Paul Road, and when we moved here, we were forced to enrol my 2 children at a nursery in the fabulous borough of Western East Cheam, West Sutton East Cheam, where we are. And that was because nursery places in the area are, they are like Hennessy. As a result, you get a lot of people who have kids in locations that are further away from their homes than they would normally choose. So myself, I'm much aware if there was additional provision closer to where you live, there would be much better likelihood of you being adjacent and using other modes of transport to get there. And having visited, and I cycle every morning with my boys on cargo bike, I was pass on way to Tony and my house. I can give a fairly reasonable estimate of the nursery on Sherwood Park Lane, Sherwood Park Road in the ward, of having about 50% trips by car, about 25%, 30% on foot, and about 20% on bike. There are at least 4 or 5 parents who bring their bikes. So I'm not going to disagree with your single assessments of traffic at bumps and busy bees and at the Oaks Park. I would just counter with numbers are, they're not quite as extreme, I don't think. So.
I think we've exhausted the questions to officers. Shall we hear from the objector? Mr. Brown, would you like to come and join us?
Thank you.
You've got 4 minutes.
They're not in particular order because they were sort of hastily put through, and some of the other ones I picked up from here. So firstly, he was sitting there where he's about deliveries for the nursing was going to go ahead. If you've got 103 children, at least 25 staff, all the supplies for food, water, every other auxiliaries they sit there at hand. For the cleaners, it's a large building with potentially 128 people. There'll be regular cleaning required. What time will that be? AM, PM, the amount of staff will be required to do that. Will they have vehicles with them, and how long will they be there for? And also put note the tradesmen, but I've seen and found since reading through this as well, they're talking of being building being demolished and then replaced. How long will that take? What will the inconvenience be for that happening? As and when, if it goes across the refuse, how much refuse created by the nursery, food, nappies, general waste, how much will be stored, and will there be more regular collections? If not, will there be huge amounts of waste that could be rotting or polluting the area? Sorry, it's not that here. And they're saying about the noise, and also I noticed again today about the erection of a fence on the west side. It's sort of 3 sides to the garden. What about the rest of them? And sound doesn't just come horizontally; it goes everywhere. And they say you've got the staff, children noise all day, and what time will the nursery operate? Which actually I've now found in here, and yet the road noise from 256 potential car journeys. I can understand your point, but it also recounts the shields. Inspections of all the other facilities nearby. But again, the immediate traffic, and we're fine because I actually live in York Road. I literally, from my home office, I can see Linden Lodge across the road. The inconsiderate parents is unbelievable. As Councillor Shield was saying before, that because there's a yellow line further around the corner, they sit there and go move a little bit quicker, but otherwise, only on Friday, I had somebody park across my drive. Well, there's plenty of space that my wife regularly takes up to 5 minutes to get out of the drive to go to work at the school. She had to try and leave 10 minutes earlier to get to work because of the people that are sitting there parking. We've mentioned about the bus routes as well. The 470 that predominantly comes along Worcester Road, that regularly has problems because of the traffic that's there. It's single use traffic, and that comes along quite a lot. You also, as well, with the increased traffic that will be around the area, you've got the ambulance station at the top of Holland Avenue near the bowling club and that way. What input could that have? Because I know the parents live in Woodmanston, and there was an issue a while ago with the increased traffic parked along the roads. A fire engine was unable to get through to a fire, and unfortunately somebody passed away because of that. Get the other points. Sorry. TVs and laptops.
Primarily, say was going to be the main thing that's come along a lot of it is the local traffic in the area, and I can see from the reports they've been there, and say Councillor Shields mentioned as well. You know, it's a bit of a fallacy what they're doing. They're coming round inspecting, was it 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock, 5 o'clock, and 6 o'clock? They're coming round at, you know, exact times and putting a thing. They're not staying there consistently to see what the vehicles are and how long they're staying there for, because most of the people will be there for 5 minutes. You know, and leave it, you know, going there. So there's even going to be spaces around all the time, but it's the situation they have, you know, the inconsiderate people that are there all the time. And also as well with all the increased traffic that would be there, so we should be becoming a grandparent and looking after the children, you know, the pollution that's going to come because of that. So,
You had your comments.
thanks.
Thank you very much indeed. You know, any questions to Mr. Brown? Councillor Shields.
I think Councillor McCoy was first.
Fine. No.
Thank you. You've talked about some of the pressures. I mean, you're projecting what you think some of the pressures will be. Can we talk about the existing pressures? What are the key things are, excuse me, that are causing the current pressures on the area? Would you attribute to? I know there is a school nearby, but can you clarify for me?
Primarily, it's the lack of use, and it was mentioned in here as well. It's the assumption that people are going to be walking and driving.
Sorry, my question is about the existing conditions at the moment, not how you project it, but what for you've talked about some existing problems you're experiencing in the area with traffic and parking. Can you say what are the causes of those?
Well, some of those at the moment that's causing a lot of it is moving out of the increasing in the yellow lines that are in around the area, which are then causing more and more people to move further away from stations and then just parking there, which they're perfectly entitled to do. Then it's the inconsiderate people that are parking there, and so they really have problems with blocking the drive, even when there are 2 cars sitting in the drive. People say, I'm just dropping off somebody who's leaving their car running, as I said before, and just not thinking about it. And it's the increase in traffic. We're seeing it all around the area.
So you're saying that's largely commuter parking, people coming to the town centre and
Because I'm bringing up York Road, and it's a little bit further up, but there's more and more cars that are parking further away. Because of there's an increase in volume of people that are driving, rather than taking the perfect idea of they're saying here with 18 cycle spaces. Better, you know, they wouldn't have 18 people would ever sit and have bikes there at all.
Okay.
So they're all going to say, right, you're wrong, you assume the vast majority of them will be car journeys.
Was your area considered as part of the parking strategy for a controlled parking zone?
People are really borders.
We might ask Councillor Garrett about that at the moment. So anything else that people want to raise with Mr. Brown? Councillor Shields, did you
Just generally, Mr. Brown, I know where you live.
Just watch this.
So when it was in operation as a nursing home, it would, I would consider, be far less intensive usage. Was there an issue with, our concern will be the dropping off of the pickup times, with people leaving their car across drive into the site today. There's very little space in the road outside. They're nearly all drop curbs, which we know because we live in the real world. People will just leave their cars parked over there. So my concern is, do you think this will blight your property?
Yes, I've got it at the bottom. I can get to it, so I don't have time. But it affect the same my welfare, my health, my granddaughter as well that we now have, and also the value of the property as well, because you know, ordinarily it's a, you know, where I live, quite nice area, but now I think they're concerned that if people are going to be going there, you know, they're less likely to buy a house near a school.
The issue that we can consider is the blight, i.e. the reduction in your peaceable, reasonable enjoyment on a day-to-day basis.
Yes, the increased noise and traffic, everything else that was there, and especially probably being from 7 AM, and that's just for the nursery opening. That doesn't include the people getting there, the staff getting there to work, and then leaving in the evening as well.
Cleaners after the 7
before that, because that's not been taken.
So I must make a note to ask the applicant, what are the true plausible usage hours of this property occupancy?
Okay. We did say something about demolition of site. Now, my understanding is it was instantly proposed to demolish this. It's some sort of renovation, but
No, there are proposals are going to include the demolition. just restriction internal operation or something.
People in there, it does say doesn't include demolition. Sorry, I only read this, so I didn't know what to prepare. So if I find it, I'll point it to you after the person. That's what's concerned.
Thank you very much indeed, Councillor Garrett, you've been very, I feel I'm not quite sure you were here when I said at the beginning of the meeting that we wouldn't take this before 9 o'clock, but in the end it was about 20 to 10, I don't lie. But you got 4 minutes.
I've got nothing else to be doing, so turn that on. So Linda Lodge was actually originally in Sutton West Ward, but without actually physically moving the building, it now is in Belmont Ward. As the Belmont councillors, we've received many objections, emails objecting to expressive concerns from local residents about this change of use from that's currently disused care home. So I'm here this evening to represent those concerns on behalf of the residents and propose the application as it stands. I think it boils down to 3 broad areas. One is about noise and space on site. 2 is about the extra traffic that it will generate. And 3 is about the additional parking demand from staff and also from the pickup and drop-off traffic. I think the question for the committee considering this is how those issues can be addressed within the application, and I don't think that they can. That's my reason for objecting. So to elaborate on the noise and space, it is a very small site, and between physical measures and operational processes, how can that be managed so as not to become intrusive? While still allowing children to be children while they're there. I've spent quite a bit of time on the site. And at the very least, I think the acoustic fence, if you were to approve it, ought to go around and not just down one side of the site. On the traffic, the site's on a very busy corner of an east-west and a north-south road. It means that not only is the traffic on that corner bound to increase, it's also obviously a hazard for people coming and going in and out of the building when it's in use. Especially as a lot of the traffic generated by the site, if it were, then naturally would be sort of pick up and drop off type parking, lots and lots coming and going rather than sort of stable parking. And I think in the introduction it was referred to as a car-free application. I think that phrase was used, which I think honestly cannot possibly be a reality-based view of that part of the borough. On the parking, I think there's already a problem with parking, many commuters and others parking near drive, which we heard about just now. And I think the extra parking, particularly being the pick up and drop off parking, is bound to make that worse. And it's not clear to me what arrangements have been thought about for picking up and dropping off, which is a big issue for parents using the building as it's supposed to be used. And the reality is you can't force parents to walk where use the bus or regardless of what you might like to think of. And there is already parking problem around that junction. And finally, there's a concern about the impact of parked vehicles and manoeuvring vehicles on this 470 bus, the legendary 470 bus we've heard about, the amazing public transport in this part of our borough, which comes down regularly, if not frequently. It's hell and ride during that section. So if either more yellow lines go in to manage parking, or if there is just a lot more parking, lots of vehicles maneuvering, how does that then allow 470 to operate as a hail and ride if it can't actually stop for a whole section of that road? And so I think, in conclusion, that those are the issues that I think the application raises, and I think the reasons why it shouldn't be approved about noise and space, about traffic, and about parking. And I hope you'll recognise that this evening. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Councillor Garrett. Question for Councillor Garrett. Councillor McCoy and Councillor Taylor.
Thank you. Thanks, Councillor Garrett. As a Belmont councillor, I presume you're familiar with some of the nurseries listed in the report that said that they're listed because they're full. So do you, what's your experience or understanding of the sort of the vehicle movements relating to those nurseries? We've talked about a 76% in a similar PTAL rating. I'd like to know what I assume that these nurseries.
You're asking me if I've been doing a Councillor Shield and been loitering outside.
No, I'm not. No, I'm not. I'm
still.
assuming you've got knowledge from them being in your ward and possibly casework relating to it. So I presume that most of these nurseries are in a similar PTAL rating area. The
whole area. Sorry, I'm
Yeah, and then we've got this claim that 78% of the children arriving at this new nursery would not be by car. How does that compare with your experience of these nurseries?
I don't have data on those nurseries. I haven't used any of them myself, but it stretches credibility, I think, in the sites that part of the borough that see anything like that level non-car use. It is, the public transport infrastructure there is limited. That part of the borough is a long, dragging uphill slope, so it lends itself naturally to lots of cycling. The population, the building density is quite low, and so people, the distances that are walkable are not. It's not normal for walkable, like say in the middle of Sutton town centre. And so I don't have hard evidence, but I would be amazed if any of them are anywhere near that.
Can I just follow up? Has there been any complaints from residents around any of these other nurseries about obstructive parking, about difficulty parking, those sort of issues?
I don't know about the nurseries. There's a big difficulty is around the primary school at the other end of York Road, and that I would describe as a constant issue.
And chaos.
Chaos. Yeah.
Yes.
Councillor Taylor, did you want to?
Yeah, my only question was around parking issues. So I noticed in the reports, parking survey showed quite a considerable number of vacant spaces in the vicinity. I noticed a particular stretch along south from Worcester Road that's particularly suitable for drop off. And north from Worcester Road as well, where there's often a lot of vacant space. Travelling down there every morning as I do at nursery drop-off time. The nursery drop-off times typically a little bit before school drop-off times. They don't usually correspond, so you wouldn't necessarily have double peaking. I'm interested though that a lot of the comments to you seem to be about the perception of. Are they more about perception of issues occurring, or are they more about issues that are occurring today that they feel will get worse? Try to grasp that.
Yeah, I think, I suppose, unlike some of the people in this room, I don't live in that direct area. So maybe I'm not the person to ask about what is the current reality, but that was possibly a question.
More about the perception of the comments to you.
Yeah, I think that currently the situation at that end of the road is kind of tolerable. I think the concern is that if you add 100 odd children plus a couple of dozen staff, a tolerable situation becomes intolerable. And particularly because inevitably what then happens is the council's parking team come along and say, let's solve your parking problem by inserting lots of yellow lines. And then I think that, as the resident was saying earlier, there's this sort of creeping tide of parking restrictions, which is partly why that's a commuter target, because you walk to Cheney, but you can't park very much closer to Cheney.
Can I just come?
Yeah, Councillor Shields.
On the back of it, I think using the Lambeth methodology where people checked, I think the long-term parking issue is not the issue. The issue is the nuisance of if we say 50%. So it's 103 kids, call it 50 kids, 50 drop-offs, 50 pickups at least. And I must remember to ask the applicant if there are sort of a double shift. Do we have one group of children in the mornings? So if that is the case, we can double that traffic figure, and it will be the houses nearest that will be blighted by it. I don't think many people will drive there, put their child into a daycare, park the car up the road, and then clear off. I think that's probably something we could possibly discount as a concern in the immediate situation. But you're the councillor. Have the question. The question was, how would you agree with that? That's nice.
Okay, thanks. Do you do any of your residents complain to you about lack of nursery places in the area?
I can't say that anyone ever has, but I think I would. I think I recognise the fact that generally there is a need for nursery places. So I think in making the comments that I did, and obviously within the time limit that I have, I think it is. I don't rush to dedicate an evening of my life to go and object to somebody who's going to start a business to provide nursery places that people do need. That's not really how I like to spend my time, and it's not really how. So I think I don't dismiss out of hand the need for nursery places. or the need to do something with that site. I think there are real problems.
Yeah, I can do that. Okay, are we prepared to go on to hear from Joe Haynes, representing the applicant? Okay, Mr. Haynes. Mr. Haynes here.
Thanks.
Thank you very much indeed, councillors. Yeah, please stop the table. Thank you.
Hello.
Very much, and thank you for staying so late. Sorry about that. That's my inability to chair the meeting properly to give us the time. Would you like to just introduce your team?
Yes, indeed. I'm sorry, I'll turn it off this back. My name is Joe Haynes. I'm the planning agent at Savills. Check.
Sorry. Jodie Park from CTP Consulting. I'm the transport planning consultant.
Sam Message from ACA Acoustics, the acoustic consultant on this project.
Okay, you've got 4 minutes if you wish to speak to the committee.
I'd like to thank you for staying so late for us. Appreciate it. We're acting on behalf of two applicants. One is NSS Sutton LLP, who are funders, and the operator is going to be Fenny's Nurseries. They've got a number of nurseries throughout London, primarily in South London, and they are a successful and expanding company. We've been asked about, I think, none of the objections are traffic, parking, and noise. There was a question about acoustic fencing. There's an acoustic fence that's proposed along the western boundary of the site. We're perfectly prepared to increase that to go all the way around the immunity area, the pay area, to allay any concerns that members may have for noise. With regards to transport, members have asked the question about, how often children will be dropped off. 103 children in total. They won't all be dropped off at the same time. So any drop-offs would be staggered. We've been asked about the legitimacy of the transport surveys that have been undertaken. Has been brought into question. And I think what we can say to that is that those transport surveys have been undertaken in a professional manner, and they're supported, as are the acoustic assessments and every other plan and matter is supported by your officers wholly and fully. And the application is policy compliant with your own adopted planning policies. I think we'd love to answer questions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. So we'll get back to it. Councillor Shields, I'll start with you then.
Thank you. Regarding your own submission, which we call TCP Consulting, we have 3.12. It is not expected that children will cycle distances. It is reasonable. These are talking about tiny kids. It is reasonable to assume that parents, carers can continue their journey to work by bicycle. I've never read something quite as disjointed as that. How does the person with the child, who won't be on a cycle, get to the development, to the site, and then cycle off afterwards? Are these people octopuses or something? Or they want these cars?
I think they'd have a seat on the back of their bike.
That's assuming someone's got £2,500 to £3,000 for a custom built bike.
No, just a.
I'm sorry, Sebastian. I have a son. He's 11 now, so he doesn't go on back.
Does he go on back of your bike?
He did. Certainly did. He certainly did when he was up to the age of 4. Went on my bike. I cycled into the town.
Right, so we've identified almost one of the rarest breeds. I know Councillor Taylor takes his kids on a bicycle, but I'm talking about the other 102 kids that will come in a car. This is unfeasible. Why is this act of fiction being put before us? It is unfeasible that there's any truth in it.
It's not a fiction. It's a
not a reality, sir.
Well considered travel and transport survey.
It is Swiss cheese. It is. How can you expect us to agree with what you're saying when it is blatantly not the case for this locality? There's virtually no public transport. As Councillor O'Connor says, the bus, when it turns up, it's half an hour if you're lucky. And it totally relies on the motor vehicle, which will, in its intensification of use, let's face it, you're applying for a massive trip generator by a motor car. That is the actual nub of what you're applying for. So how does that fit in the residential setting that you're applying for?
If I could start with the surveys that we undertook at the other Friendly's nurseries and why we think that
they are in Bromley.
They are in Bromley, yes, but they're similar in location. They're also on residential streets. They also offer parking opportunities. So parents could drop off by car to those nurseries, and yet only 22% were shown to drive. And the vast majority would travel by sustainable modes. That is what the evidence has shown us from these surveys. And we also did surveys to determine how arrivals and departures, so when will children be dropped off? And the surveys have shown that they are spread out over, drop-offs are spread out over a 3-hour period in the morning, and in the afternoon pickups take place over a 2-hour period. So it shows that it's not like a school where you've got a clear peak, drop-offs in the morning. They will be spread out over the morning and over the afternoon period. And then when you're applying, the 22% of car driver trips to, it ends up being that you'd have around 7 drop-offs by car, and one each hour in the morning period. And we've done parking beat surveys which show that there is ample capacity for additional cars to park that could be generated by this development. We don't see that there would be a material impact.
With the greatest respect, I've discounted the problem with car parking, because there is car parking there. You're using it to support and credit your application, and then say there's loads of car parking, but they won't use the car. You just cannot have it both ways.
Why not?
Because it doesn't make sense. I'm on a sense merchant.
We can say that we expect 20% based on surveys that have been professionally undertaken. We expect 20% of children to be delivered and picked up by car. Well, we can also encourage people not to use their cars, and it's just a matter of fact that there is a certain amount of car parking available in the local area. That's not a conflict.
It is.
Because you've got 2 barbs, doesn't mean you'll have 2 barbs.
If there's loads of car parking, there doesn't need to be any car parking as a rationale, because there isn't going to be hardly any or any, according to your bogus report. You really cannot have it both ways. Now we know there is a 5-hour period every day of upsetting the neighbourhood, which constantly dropping off, parking across driveways, because that is what will happen. Now we know that's 5 hours. That resolves me even more. Thank you.
Okay, let's get this, but I'll go down this side. I'll come back to Councillor Allen, and then perhaps we can try and very quickly reach some conclusion. Councillor Taylor.
I think the transport report is optimistic, but I think it's quite feasible. It's been done to the accepted methodologies. I think that we accept that as it is, even if you don't personally believe it. My concerns based around the area provision for outside latency for the children. I think that there appears to be the site has been expanded, the footprint of the building has been expanded in its use as a care home when the outside space hasn't been a priority. The extension out the back allows more inside space, which has ultimately allowed 102 inside spaces to be acceptable. I think that's meant that the outside space just isn't up to standard. And I think that the conditions that we're putting on children to be in the summer, not outside before 3 because of UV restrictions, and inside before 4:30 is preposterous and is completely unreasonable. And I think it highlights how, whilst I absolutely support the provision of nursery spaces in this location, I think that what has been applied for is overutilisation of space. And I've got a real problem with it on those grounds. And I would absolutely support a nursery in this space, but not of that size.
You're making a speech, you're not.
I get it, has the outside space provision, which I am so concerned about, been considered, and can you confirm that you comply with the UIFS guidelines for outside space, outside play for children during the day in an hour and a half that you get with 28 kids in the garden at any time?
I can't confirm that we comply with those regulations or that guidance. I have asked Felix what actual requirements there is for outside space for nurseries, and their response, there is no set requirement for outside space for nurseries. There's certainly guidance to encourage outside space for children to play.
There's time requirements, not space.
Right, I can't answer that question, I'm sorry. What I would say is that we have agreed to a condition that it's a number of children using the outside space.
That to comply with noise and space requirements, you're then reducing the provision of outside time.
Can I suggest if anyone else wants to make a speech, setting out their views, they do that in a moment. Is there any other practical, factual question anyone wants to put to the applicant? Councillor O'Connor.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Please tell me, what is the upstairs organs used for? Because obviously, it's obviously nursery. So what would the opposite permission use for upstairs?
It's both nursery space and back office space and staff.
Just one final question. Following on from Councillor Taylor's garden. Obviously, in a garden, you've got kids in the garden, they need equipment like slides, toys. So how would that equipment fit in the garden with 20 odd kids in such a small space?
I think the play equipment in garden can be designed in a way that fits within the space and forms a part of the space. So, for example, I'm not saying that this is what they put in, but a climbing ring could be something that children climb over and through, and it's part of the space that you use. It's just not an open space.
Councillor Cumber?
Yeah, as Councillor Taylor said about the traffic reports, saying about 78% of children dropped off back by non-car means quite optimistic, as Councillor Taylor said. My question is, there's also a high number of parking, it's 80, expecting staff to be cycling into there every day, and also that survey. Why Bromley? I know nurseries there in Bromley. Obviously, the public transport situation is probably different to Bromley investment buses, trains that it's got there. So maybe that be considered in terms of each letter document you can carry out.
So starting with the cycle parking, we provided individuals with the adopted local plan minimum standards. That's why there are 18 cycle parking spaces. So we comply with your policy at that point. In terms of the surveys, sorry, what was your question about those? The suitability of them?
It's sort of why Bromley?
Why Bromley?
Yes.
Because you have to consider public transport situation there, obviously it depends where it was it near a train station, was it near bus routes, etc.
Yeah, so the surveys were undertaken at two other Fenny's nurseries. And they were in suitable locations because, you know, they're, as I mentioned before, they're on residential streets with similar detail ratings, similar parking provision. It's difficult to survey other nurseries without permission. It's, you know, especially if you're monitoring comings and goings of children. So we feel like the most appropriate thing to do is to survey nurseries associated with the applicant.
Okay, right, I was hoping we could wind this up rapidly. Councillor Craig, Councillor Allen, keep it quick.
Yeah, sure. 4.3, so 4.2. You talk about variety of age assumption, that's not up to about 5, including 2 preschool rooms, 1 toddler, 1 baby room. How many babies would the baby room take, for example? Possibly.
And standard up to 25.
For babies?
Possibly, yes.
So they would come to the school. What, I think those?
Yeah.
A baby?
Yeah.
Okay.
They can get us also there, but
Okay, fine, I'll park that. And secondly, will there be any SEN provisions on site?
special education.
Yes.
I can't honestly answer that question. I don't know. I haven't been told that there would be.
I just want to actually back you up at one point, so I know you think everything's been against you. But there is a Fenny's, I think, in Carshalton Road. And I don't think that's got any outside play schools. So there are some of these play schools that haven't got any outside. Well, how do you actually get permission there? I'm just, no, you don't. Yeah, but they possibly do on walking trains or whatever they do. But I just know that. Yeah.
Councillor Allen.
Thank you, Chair. I'm harking back to this transport ban again. The fact you think that only 20% of children will actually ride by car. When my son was going to preschool some 20 odd years ago, the only place we could get was in Sutton, and we lived in Barheath, which was a drive of about 7 miles there and back twice a day. To achieve this 20% only coming by car, are you therefore proposing that you would put a limit on how far, what the area of acceptability for people coming to the school is?
We
just to drive from Dorking or wherever if it's the only school that's available.
It's a good point. We can't say where parents can come from. We can't control that. But what Fenny's have done is to look at how many households there are within a 12-minute walking distance, of which there are 4,500 some households. They've looked at the capacity of local nurseries, which are all full, and so they judge that there would be enough families within a local area to fill the spaces available in this nursery.
But you're not going to impose a restricted area where it can come from. So they're going to travel from far and wide.
They agreed. We can't control how far parents would be willing to bring their children.
I live next door to a junior school, and every morning, every afternoon, it's impossible to park a car on the road. You come home, you have a parking permit to park on the road for residents only, and you can't get a parking space because all those mothers who come by bikes or walk are all parked in those spaces holding them. And not only that, they will empty their child out into the road. They'll come out the driver's door, they'll open the back door, and they'll unload the child into the traffic.
I think you feel like his speech rather than okay. Is there anything you want to say in response to that, or is there anything you'd like to just add to what you said?
I think
officers have recommended a number of conditions. We heard the comments about the acoustic fence going all the way around the boundary.
The acoustic fence all the way around, yeah.
Happy to take that on. I should point out that there are 5 parking spaces in the forecourt of the building. We expect only one of those to need to be reserved for the nursery itself, and those other 4 spaces could be available for drop-offs and pickups if necessary.
Okay, thank you very much.
A very quick point regarding noise, very quick.
Okay, on those, yeah.
I think in terms of the noise from the play area, you can't, also one thing to consider is you can't compare it to an idyllic empty space. It was previously, no, because it was previously a care home.
Where they were all indoors 24/7.
It's garden 24/7 potentially.
Oh, hold on, it's the garden 24/7.
Staff are smoking.
That's a noisy pastime, isn't it?
Yeah, at least there's 5 of them.
Okay, well, thank you. Thank you very much. We go back to the comment barrier now. Right, now in terms of debating this and reaching a conclusion, Councillor Shields, I don't know why, but I have a sort of suspicion that you want to make Mike and Celia want to put something to the committee. Councillor Howley,
A debate. I'm sorry, just a bit of a debate.
Yes, sure.
Council proposal. I agree that the parking drop-off situation, optimistic, etc. If we were to consider what we think with our local knowledge it might be, would that be unacceptable? Because I don't think that it's exactly as the report says, but it needn't necessarily mean that we have to turn it down just because we think there'd be a few more people arriving by car.
We'll only get one chance to assess that.
It's not material grounds to argue against the facts report, is it?
I think
Well, okay, let me, Councillor Shields, you give us your views.
I think the debate is multifaceted, but let's be honest. We've had 22 letters of objection. Councillor Garrett has had quite a large amount of people that haven't objected but have contacted the local councillors with their concerns. We have the material planning considerations, which are traffic generated, noise, air pollution, from the traffic, inadequate outdoor play space, impact on the 407 bus. And officers' responses are, well, yeah, it'll all be okay. And local knowledge means, well, it won't be okay. It's an over-intensification of use. It's a loss of a residential home. I don't think anyone's saying, no, not a childcare facility. No one's really said, no one said that, and I'm not saying that. The intensification of use, the comings and goings, the hours of operation. If it opens at 7, someone's going to be in there at 6, turning the lights on, etc. That's just the reality of life. It's going to be operated on and serviced over the weekends. Things are going to need to be cleaned, maintained. This is a business operation. And now we've got to be very careful of the impact of introducing a business, obviously they're a successful business, into a domestic setting. That is the feeling here. And I think the feeling is of the intensification of use. 103 kids, 25 members of staff, plus whatever else could be happening. That is an enormous amount of human movement, of which residents have partitioned it into different segments, but it all really means the same thing. It's going to be one heck of a area of activity where previously it's been a care home with very few visitors, sadly, and very little impact on the residents. And certainly, I must just nauseam repeat, the poor souls that have the drop curbs around there are just going to be blighted, and we've got to be careful that we don't produce harm for the existing residents.
You want to?
Yeah, can I just make a point that I think, if I understand rightly, that the existing care home is 24/7 operations. So
it's not. It's been closed for about 2 years.
I know, but there's potential, isn't it, that if the care home was to be taken up by another occupier, it would be a 24/7 operation.
Correct, that would be correct, but people in care homes tend to be in bed or in rather sedate lifestyle. They're not doing the conga outside the place 24/7.
About staffing, about people around at 6, that could be the same situation with the care home.
The staffing of the care home, yes.
Councillor Clyde. Councillor Clyde.
Thank you. I have a similar situation in my ward where there is a nursery in a residential area. And again, a similar argument was put that because it serves the location and it's quite dense, that most of the journeys will be on foot. And I can attest that my casework bag is full of complaints about the nursery. They've tried to do all sorts of things. Many people arrive to drop their children off by car, possibly coming from further away, or simply because they are dropping them off on the way to work, because that's usually why people use a nursery. That is the experience, and unfortunately, the experience is very similar to around schools. You have obstructed parking. There might be suitable parking, but it's a bit of a, there's always overhanging drop curbs because of the yellow lines, those sort of things. So that's what happens. I know in the report there's talk about a robust travel plan. But I think nearly all of our schools have travel plans in place, and we know that around schools you get, even there might be parking, there's obstructive parking, there's people annoyed about parking space, terrible bedlam sometimes we hear about, which is why we've had to put in certain measures. So while optimistic, and I'm sure in maybe central London places people do cycle and use more public transport more, but we don't have tubes, we don't have the same element of public transport, and it's quite hilly in key parts of Sutton as well. But I think, and also people might be travelling to work outside of London rather than in London as well. So I think it is a bit unrealistic to think that that so few people will travel, and I think there is potential. I know the school in the area, won't all be at the same time, but I think the ongoing issues are a concern. Interestingly, so I'm comparing it to an experience in my ward, nobody's complained about the noise, and the outdoor amenity is a lot closer to residential properties either side. Nobody's ever complained about the noise of the children. So I think that's possibly not as bad as people think it will be. But at the moment they're used to having no noise. That's an issue. I do have concerns about the impact of the transport in an area. There's commuter parking, there's a school there. I think it will impact on the amenity of residents. And I say we are putting a commercial property into what is a predominantly residential area, and I think that the harm outweighs the need for a nursery in this location.
Okay, what about?
Yeah, just very quick. So I was on the obviously concur with what Councillor Sheep say. Also, in addition, just regarding trying to justify the application by moving the time to use the garden, I think I'm very concerned if it's not that's summertime. If you were to tell your child to live in the garden between 9 and 4:30 and it's daylight, what would your child be doing between 4:30 and 6:30 if the parents are still at work? So I think there's a lot of issues here. Parking, the open site, so I'm quite concerned to convince by this application.
I would be very supportive if the numbers were lower.
Yeah,
there were fewer restrictions on the children playing outside, which I would assume come from lower numbers. I absolutely think nursery provision is needed in this area. I think that it's just too much. Is there any way we can put a restriction on the number so that the operator can decide whether that is a viable operation? Because I think we need. The point that was made that was, I think, cut through the most was that this is currently a residential home which has 24-hour operation, which means staff on shifts, which means cleaning throughout the day. In a nursery, you close at night. You have time to clean in reasonable hours rather than having it done constantly. It's not open over the weekends, the nursery. So there is this impact and blight and residential area character. I'm not convinced. So is there anything we can do?
In terms of reducing the number of children, that would the applicant will need to consider that. And I don't know if you can consider that today without talking to his client, he would need to confirm.
Yeah, that strikes me as fairly unlikely. That, I mean, if we said, okay, we'll agree it, but yeah, it's got to be 50 kids rather than 3 kids. We can't do that. Councillor Craigie then.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. And I understand what Councillor Sutton is saying, actually. I refer back to something this council got caught with last year, and it's looking at reports that might have optimism bias in them, which we all know about. And this is certainly one of those that's got optimism bias in it. And if we take that on board, it could be problematic. I also worry about the answer I got with regards to the number of babies, which is 25 babies, not 1, 2, 3-year-olds. And I'm afraid I don't think they'll come to the nursery. They're very, very young. I think they'll be taken there and dropped off. However, I do understand the need for present need for places in the borough, and it is a difficult one. But on balance, I think at the moment it's difficult to support this application because it looks such an over intensification of the site, and I would be, I'm afraid, looking at the over intensification reason for turning it down. To be honest, thank you.
Like Councillor Halden, you said you wanted a discussion before we move prematurely to the recommendation. Was there anything you wanted to?
I kind of did in saying, you know, perhaps there is optimism bias, but would it be so bad? I agree that it would be more palatable if there were fewer places being provided at the site, given the limitations on the amenity space, etc., etc. I don't know. I just think, you know, we need nursery places. We should be supporting people who need them, who are, let's face it, mainly women and
yeah.
The what?
Well,
they live nearby, and you know, I'm sure they would be very appreciative of 100 extra nursery places. And yes, some people might be annoyed for 5 minutes while someone parks over their drop curb. But
it's every day, twice a day. You'd see the funny side of that.
What, twice a day? Someone's parked over my drop curb for 5 minutes. Yeah, it's annoying.
That car's there, and then the next car comes, then the next car comes.
I'm not saying I want it to be done to you. I'm just saying you weigh up the benefit of, you know, this is a future generation of children who need somewhere to go to nursery school, and the inconvenience of someone parking over a drop curb, whilst very annoying, isn't the same as not being able to put your kid in a nursery just outside your front door. And, you know, we're saying, and they're very good points. It is very annoying when someone parks over your drop curb. I'm not saying, you know.
I think the points are well made, but we need more nursery spaces, but there are particular objections to this case.
And it is a shame that there are so many places that need to be provided, presumably to make it.
Yeah. Well, perhaps if it's turned out, I mean, maybe the applicant will want to reconsider the size of it. Well, we seem to be moving as a committee to towards considering rejection, but issues like intensification of the use, parking, and noise. Can you
yeah, is that what? Is that what?
well, how as chair, I think I'm looking for a specific proposition.
Well, it's
Councillor
just scratched out. Over-intensive development of an established start again. Over-intensification of use in an established residential area, raising concerns over the plausibility of the traffic report, given that it does not appear to reflect with the real world.
No, you can't say that.
So the real, it's a reference, that's another world, different world.
So it's documenting, and this local area is different to the one where they did the study in. Don't be.
Yeah, but look, do we really want to go into that sort of?
It's just an over-intensification. I mean, we have professional planning staff. Traffic movement. We have professional planning staff that should be able to turn their hand to planning speak, this is just too much for this site, and we look forward to something coming forward with a far more sedate impact on the area. You are the professional planning staff, and we look to you to come up with a defendable.
Can we talk about impacts on the amenity of neighbours?
Sorry?
Yeah, I think
Impacts
you're
on the
right.
amenity of residents?
Impact on the amenity of residents.
Okay, how about,
The identification of the use and parking, how about that?
so we could do something like due to the number of proposed nursery places at the site, this would
Represent.
lead to over intensification of the use and will result in a loss of amenity in the residential locality in terms of highway safety. And
And a source of trip generation. Extra, source of extra trip generation.
Result in extra trips to a nursery further away. For the
Oh, living application was all about the car park, but the cars going to and from, so it is that.
Okay.
Well, you'll give me ground for opinion.
As I understand it, under our standing orders,
If it's not there, then I'll definitely go somewhere else.
yeah, so, I mean, are we prepared at this late hour to try and actually finish our agenda by, voting on a proposal which has been indicated to, turn down this application? We're asking the officers to come out with wording around intensification of use, parking, noise. What's the kind of, what you got?
so over intensification of the use, unacceptable levels of trip generation, loss of amenity. Yeah, and are we doing health and safety, highways, health and safety, is that?
I didn't hear that.
Yeah, so those three.
So you can't win on one point of this. Yeah.
Okay, well, let's, can we move to a vote on that proposition? I think that's a reminder what we are.
Chair, don't we have to vote on the recommendation?
Sorry?
Just a vote on the recommendation in the report as it stands and whether you vote for or against the officer's recommendation, and then.
Yes, simply.
Yeah, see if that was only. Thank you, Chair. So to be strictly accurate, yes, we should vote on the officer's recommendation first, which I think we've all got the impression that that's probably not going to find favour. We will then move to vote on the on refusing the application on the basis of the grounds which the planning officer has just set out. And I think that's absolutely the right way to do it, so that we can actually have no doubt whatsoever about what we've discussed, despite the fact it's 11 o'clock at night.
Thank you, Brighton. Okay, so the first vote then is on the acceptance of the recommendation to approve it. Would you like to do the?
Councillor Eric Allen,
Against.
Councillor Tim Crowley,
Against.
Councillor Sam Cumber,
Against.
Councillor Tim Foster,
Against.
Councillor Amy Harding,
Or
Councillor Patrick O'Connor,
Against.
Councillor Tony Shields,
Against.
Councillor Luke Taylor,
Against.
Councillor Jane McCoy,
Against.
Councillor Richard Gibson.
Oh, that's the.
Ben.
Okay,
4-8 against.
right, so that's lost. So we're now going to vote on a proposal to reject this application on the grounds of, have we got,
Yeah, over intensification, unacceptable levels of trip generation and loss of amenity to the locality.
okay, right.
Have neighbour nuisance, that Councillor Lloyd mentioned.
Yeah, impacts on the amenity.
Impact on neighbour amenity.
Yeah.
Well, you've got lots of amenity to.
Residents of the locality, it's not problem, it's the other things.
The same 10 houses are going to have a car parked across their drive 50 times a day. Those are the people.
Sorry, the officers will take this on, we'll craft it into reasonable language. So we're gonna vote on that. Okay,
Councillor Eric Allen,
Or
Councillor Tim Crowley, Councillor Sam Cumber, Councillor Tim Foster, Councillor Amy Harding,
I'll abstain as I voted in favour of the officer's recommendation.
Councillor Patrick O'Connor, Tony Shields, Councillor Taylor against. Councillor Jones Boyd.
Well,
Well, I'll abstain again. Look, that brings us to the end of our agenda. Look, can I thank you all very much indeed for staying so late. I apologise to you for my poor chairmanship of the meeting, which has meant that we had to stay here till 11 o'clock at night. Some earlier points in the meeting, I would claim I was not held by people, but there we are.
You bounced on and got the business done.
I will take that.
I know a bloke like that in the.
He has the crowd, he wants to see it. I did the way he was spoken to the staff. No, they're professional. They're professional. The way you spoke to the I can't do that.
Let me see what we've got.
It was because they was interested in the last time. I missed out something. I want to feel. They are professional. No, that's not what you do. How much of a job they were going to do. So in a map job, that's what's there out in room and unpleasant. And I think real things like concern, like math. Are you sure what those in here? No. You should be ordered about being questioned. So that was absolutely wrong. It's embarrassing. When you've been embarrassing being in the same room. When you've been shocked. No. Right. It was embarrassing to see.
Very fine.
The three of them didn't come.
They wouldn't tell me about salt.
They were more to this question.
No, they weren't. They were serious to answer the question.
No, it was not.